go live button on our software. So now we have to wait for the stream to get alive and well across the internet. We do multi-stream here, which means we're waiting for a couple different platforms to talk to one another. And it looks like YouTube, which is always a little slow, is live. So let's get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice. And it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and I to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. And that's why we started this program called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency back down upon our very system with the hope of encouraging some meaningful change. We do actually have some things to get into. It was a little bit of a slow news weekend and day today, but there is a couple things that I think are worth mentioning. We're going to get into a lot of it today. We're going to be talking about Jenn Psaki, the new press secretary for the Biden administration. She's out there talking more and more about reducing hate speech online. We've already been seeing this throughout the last couple weeks. Ever since the Capitol Hill riots, there's been a big push, a lot of language being used now about combating extremism and domestic violent extremism and on and on and on. So we want to break into that and talk a little bit more about what these social media companies are doing. We're going to start with Jenn Psaki and then Steven Crowder, one of the biggest YouTubers on the planet, one of the biggest conservative YouTubers, I should say, is filing a lawsuit. And he had a big announcement today. So we want to break through what that was all about. I was hopeful that we were going to have the lawsuit itself, but apparently that's not being filed until later on in the week. I think that's going to be filed out of the Northern District Federal Court out of Virginia. So we'll see what that looks like, but we do have some news on that. Over the weekend, Donald Trump was also assembling his impeachment defense team. So we want to give you some news on that, catch you up to speed. There was a lot of sort of rumor mill activity this weekend where they were saying that some of his prior attorneys had sort of bailed out, and they were having a conversation about whether or not they were going to be arguing election fraud, the F word, during the impeachment trial. And so apparently there was some disagreement about that. He's let go of some attorneys. Some other attorneys are slotting in. We'll want to catch you up to speed on that. Who are these people? Where do they come from? What are their backgrounds? And so we'll get into that. But the big crux of the show, you may have seen this spreading around the internet, is this story out of Rochester. We've spoken about Rochester a lot on this channel as it related to Daniel Prude. You may remember that case. We covered that back over the summer. And now there is a new case involving the same police, not the same exact police officers that we know of, but the same police department, the Rochester Police Department. Over the weekend, new body cam footage came out of them literally pepper spraying a 9-year-old girl. So want to break down that story. We have the full body cam. We're going to run through it sort of clip by clip. So today is going to be a lot of clip heavy, a lot of clips, a lot of video on this program, because we're going to be analyzing the body camera from the perspective of two different police officers, sort of clip that up, break that down, and do some analysis on that. So before we get started, a couple quick things, a couple quick notes. Did you know that the channel name changed? Oh my goodness, over the weekend, a little bit of a change there. Well, that's because we started a separate R&R Law Group channel that is only dedicated to Arizona law. This channel that you're watching this on currently had started out as sort of a firm channel. We were getting really into the nuts and bolts of how the law worked, but it sort of blossomed into this beautiful something else. And so we wanted to make sure that we could still provide value to our Arizona clients and people who have criminal cases in Arizona. So we're sort of segmenting that out, a little bit of just a channel update. Not a big deal. You shouldn't, nothing's going to change here. You're just going to go to a different, it's just going to say something different. It's going to say Robert Gruler instead of R&R Law Group, because we're going to be sort of segmenting the firm content out into a different channel. So just make note of that. That's where it's going to stay it's going to stay this way for the foreseeable future. I just don't want you to be confused, but it's pretty easy, right? R&R, Robert, kind of the same, should be in the same general vicinity in your subscription list. So hopefully that's not too much. All right. Anyways, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. We go live at this time every day of the week, and there is a lot of good, valuable information, or good people here, I should say, rather than just the information. And we want you to be a part of the live show. So if you subscribe, like, give us a thumbs up, comment on the video, we'd very much appreciate that. If you're not a regular, I'm going to go through some slides. We're going to look at some primary source documents, some news, and if you want a copy of those are available at the end of the program on our Locals platform. So the web address there is watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All of our slides, a free copy of my book, our impeachment templates are over there. The existence system that we covered on January 1st this year, little personal productivity program, is all over there, and you can go check that out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. So as we've been talking about, let's get into the news finally. Good Lord, what an introduction. Let's talk about what's going on with the Biden administration, and in particular, this concept of reducing hate speech, because this has been something that I think is becoming more and more prevalent in our modern era. A lot of people are talking about this language. We're seeing the administration modify their language a little bit, sort of use domestic violence extremism. We heard John Brennan out there saying that even libertarians, of which, if I had to closely identify with a political group, I would probably put myself closest into that bucket, but they're saying that those people are extremists now. So now, am I an extremist? I don't think so, but John Brennan says I might be. So, we've had a lot of questions about this. Where are they going? We've seen Twitter really limiting people by putting contextual boxes around their comments. We've seen people kicked off. We've seen entire platforms banned because of this hate speech concept, because of the extreme and the prevalence of violence allegedly that's taking place in these little communication platforms all throughout the world. There's a big push to clamp down on that. And Jenn Psaki over the weekend, or I think it was this morning, was out there just basically confirming that they are going to be taking additional steps, or continue to take steps, to reduce hate speech. So let's listen in and see what she had to say today.
As you know, President Trump has been barred from a lot of social media sites. Just curious whether you think his absence has made your job any easier, or the White House's job any easier, as it kind of goes forward on these COVID negotiations.
Yes. In what way?
He created a lot of noise, right? He would have certain gravitational pull with Republicans who may be more inclined to take a harder position. Wonder if that's been anything that you guys have thought about or kind of considered.
This may be hard to believe. We don't spend a lot of time talking about or thinking about President Trump here. Former President Trump, to be very clear. I think that's a question that's probably more appropriate for Republican members who are looking for ways to support a bipartisan package, and whether that gives them space. But I can't say we miss him on Twitter.
Does President Biden support the continuing ban of President Trump on their sites?
I think that's a decision made by Twitter. We've certainly spoken to, and he's spoken to, the need for social media platforms to continue to take steps to reduce hate speech, but we don't have more for you on it than that.
All right, give me a break. So they don't talk about Donald Trump in their White House. Give me a break. They've been talking about him nonstop. Everything that they wanted to do was to fix Donald Trump. We got 40 or something executive orders because they're undoing all the damage allegedly that Donald Trump caused. And so they're just sort of fixated on the prior administration. So I'm not sure that anybody believed that. Now, she's got to give that answer, obviously, right? She can't say, yeah, we're up at night thinking about Donald Trump. But they were given a major gift here by Twitter removing Donald Trump from their entire platform. Could you imagine? I mean, think about if he were there. Think about if he had the ability to comment on every single thing that the Biden administration was doing. It would be a train wreck. And I mentioned this at the start of the show, that a train wreck for them, and not necessarily for the country, but a train wreck for them, because Donald Trump has a big following, and he could just sort of like a laser beam, just point their following at whatever he wanted. And that would be a huge catastrophe for the Biden administration. And so Twitter gave them a massive gift in the form of deplatforming him, as did all of the other platforms. And I think that was part of the conclusion that they wanted. They wanted that outcome. They did not want him to be able to get in there and throw stones at the Biden administration. And so they just eliminated him. So the idea here that they don't think about him, or that this was just kind of oh yeah, that's a good point, I guess he's not on Twitter making any strange tweets about us, like they just didn't notice that. No, I think that they're very grateful that their road has been sort of cleared for them, and they are loving it. Now, as to the second point about we are continuing to take steps to reduce hate speech. And so this is something that we've been spending a lot of time on. I actually think it's quite concerning that they're being very aggressive with this concept of reducing hate speech. And hate speech has now taken on a multiple variations of definitions. And now you have, hate speech that's inclusive of anybody who even sort of expresses a political opinion that may be contrary to what the government is saying. So we see sort of, it's overlapping with dangerous language. And what's dangerous? Well, we have misinformation, which is also dangerous. Well, what's information? Well, it's kind of anything. You could have electoral misinformation. You could have, racial misinformation. You could have COVID misinformation. We've got all of these new concepts that are being introduced sort of around the table. And the Biden administration, I think, is largely behind it, as they're talking about continue to take steps to reduce hate speech. Now, I saw this on the New York Times this morning. When I typically wake up, I like to see what the theme of the news is going to be for the day. And it's funny to watch Jenn Psaki's comment that they don't think much about the Trump administration, when this has been the headline over on the New York Times literally all day. It was on there this morning, and it's Trump's campaign to subvert the election. So, and they're still talking about this stuff. I think this is a little bit of what's called persuasion. If you have ever heard of a guy named Robert Cialdini, he wrote 2 books, one called Influence and one called Persuasion. And you can see the New York Times is basically doing this. They're saying Trump's campaign to subvert the election. Remember, the impeachment proceedings are next week. We're going to be talking about those. But we got 2 main stories. And this morning, I think there were 4 main stories. I took a screenshot of it on my phone. But basically every one of these was all about Donald Trump. They cannot stop talking about the guy. And because the impeachment proceedings are taking place next week, in my mind, what they're doing is just framing this up. They're saying, okay, so now we're going to move forward on the impeachment trial. And they're just sort of conditioning everybody to say, oh, yeah, I remember that. I remember that electoral stuff. I remember the Capitol Hill stuff. And so they're just priming the pump in preparation for the impeachment proceeding going forward. So now we know that, Jenn Psaki, we know, a lot of these different mega platforms are moving the ball one direction. It was interesting to see what some of the conservative commentators out there in the world, in YouTube and elsewhere, are doing. And so there was a long period of time when Steven Crowder, who, if you're not familiar with Steven Crowder, I mean, you probably are, right? He's got a massive YouTube channel. I think 5.5, 6 million subscribers. I mean, very, very big. When he does live streams, a lot of the times their numbers will actually be bigger than what you would see on CNN or MSNBC or even some of the Fox News programming. I mean, a huge audience. And he was on a little bit of a hiatus for, I think, about 6 weeks. And it was right around the same time that all of this deplatforming started happening. And so, Miss Faith and I were talking about it. We're like, where did he go? We kind of keep an eye on different commentators because of what we do here. And we saw that he was just gone with the wind, and there really wasn't an explanation. Well, he came out with an explanation. I think he had twins. Congratulations, Stephen. I think he also, revealed that he had some health things he was working through. But the big news was that he was filing a lawsuit specifically because Facebook had really, I think, removed their election stream the night of the election. So back on November 3rd, they were doing a live stream. We also did a live stream, and everybody was watching his stream, of course, because he's a huge channel. And Facebook just decided to pull the stream right in the middle of it. And so he took some time off. I think he typically takes some time off around the holidays, and it was a longer period of time. And so when he came back, when he released a new video, he was saying, we're going to be suing Facebook over this. And in my mind, this is somebody who's got a huge audience. I think he's got his own attorney on staff for his show, is my understanding. And he's also got a lot of money, a lot of resources. So if anybody's going to be leading the charge, Steven Crowder is a good individual to do it. And now he's going up against Facebook. And so we've covered on this channel the prior lawsuits. We covered, Parler suing Amazon and some of the other ones. And so I wanted to keep an eye on this and see where this went. I was hoping to have an actual copy of the document here today, but we don't have that. The next best thing we have are a couple of clips from his show and some information that he put out on his website. And he says here, Louder with Crowder is suing Facebook. Facebook is the one that they're going after. He says the suit will be filed and publicly available this week. I was hoping it was going to be this week, but it's going to be filed out of the Northern District of California. So I read a different article that said it was Virginia, but California makes more sense. That's where I thought they were. I thought they were West Coast guys. It says the causes of action under state law include unfair competition and false advertising. So we're going to be looking into both of those claims. And what they're asking for is injunctive relief. So it's to basically tell they're asking the court to stop doing something. And here they're asking for the stop the unfair and deceptive acts. They're seeking a 7-figure monetary damages. So that's going to be a lot of money, right? $1 million at minimum. The goal here is to force honesty and clarity in policy application and enforcement. The broader point here is that they're pro-business but anti-fraud. Facebook lured customers and creators to spend money and provide data and views under the promise of not engaging in political, racial, religious bias or enforcing their policies, but they have done so both expressly and secretively, and hence the lawsuit. So, an interesting lawsuit. I'll be very curious to see where this goes. I have not had a lot of hopes for seeing anything fruitful out of these different suits. In my mind, I think what the courts are probably going to do here is just say, well, it's a private platform. Their terms of services are like 100 million pages long. You sign away everything, and it gives them a lot of ability to do whatever they want, as we have seen. Even when Parler was suing Amazon, in my mind, that was one of the most clear-cut cases where an injunction would have been appropriate, just to say, hey, their entire platform was built on Amazon Web Services and just gone at the stroke of a pen. I mean, basically within 24 hours, I think it was. And so they invested a lot of time, a lot of energy in order to build their product on their platform. You would think that they would be entitled to some due process, but the courts just said, nope, sorry, thanks for playing, and denied that. So we'll see where this one goes. Here is a clip from Stephen this morning. Let's listen into what he has to say.
It's different of this lawsuit from other lawsuits that have gone against big tech. And a few have some very specific factual reasons, but ours is really pro-business, anti-fraud. You can run a business however you want. If you were a social media platform or any kind of business and you want to allow certain types of contents or certain kind of customers in your store or on your platform, you're allowed to do it. But what you can't do is lie. What you can't do is say, we are open to everyone. We don't discriminate based on political ideology or race or religion, and then turn around and actually do that, both expressly and through the software that you're implementing. And the whole reason is because they need creators to be able to drive users. The only thing they have is eyeballs and ears to be able to sell ads.
Right.
And so they get creators to bring this data into them, to bring you, the free user. I mean, it's at the very front of their FAQ. Our business is your data and being able to sell that data for ads. And yet they bring people in under the auspices of saying there's no discrimination, but in reality, the bias is clear through their enforcement policies.
Yeah, and so that is his attorney. I think this is what he calls his attorney. He calls him his half-Asian lawyer. Okay, that's not my name for it, but that's who that was. And that is something that was always surprising to me, that they're able to get away with that on their channel. But that's what Steven says, and that's what his attorney says. And I'd be very interested to see where this continues, how this moves forward, because it is, I think, an interesting claim. And we've seen this sort of played out over and over and over again on the floor of the Senate. Every time that they call Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and the guy from Google in front of Congress, they always ask him these questions. Well, are you going against conservatives? Are you going against Republicans? Are you limiting speech for specific content creators? And they always say, "Oh no, Senator, no, of course not. No, it's just an algorithm. It's a platform. It's all the same." Even though many people in the conservative sphere of the internet have for a long time been cataloging the sort of the misapplication of the rules. It seems like conservatives typically get a little bit of a heavier hand than some of the other platforms. And we've seen this just kind of, I can go after, example after example. There was a great example that Tim Pool, when Tim Pool was on the Joe Rogan show, and he was sort of sitting on the opposite side of I think VJ and Jack Dorsey, and they were having a conversation about it, and Tim Pool just had example after example of where the Twitter policy was being harshly applied towards conservatives and not so harshly applied toward other more, I would say, acceptable political ideologies that Twitter favors. And so we'll see where they go. They've got a lot of history with Facebook and YouTube, and I'd be very curious as to how their records look. Every time that they've had any demonetization or any limitations, what type of information do they have? What type of scrutiny have they given the terms of service? And his attorney is probably, chomping at the bit to get this thing going. And I'm excited to see it. I was hopeful they would have posted the lawsuit today, but they didn't. Here's what they want. They want Facebook to stop these practices, to be honest about what they're doing. Simply stated, is Facebook a publisher or a platform? They need to be open about what they are and act accordingly. He said there's a double standard here. What are the actual standards by which Facebook says we users govern ourselves? Facebook needs to disclose what they're doing as a business, especially if they solicit money for advertising. Stop Facebook throttling pages and content. Stop favoring certain outlets over others. In a word, stop acting like a publisher, or just admit that they are one. We're prepared to take this lawsuit as far as we need to, even up to the United States Supreme Court. And, this is, I think, a pretty interesting idea. I would be very curious. One of the concepts that I was sort of playing around with, I'm still working on the digital Bill of Rights. I've got about 8 of them, I think, drafted up, and I want to make a separate video on that. But one of the concepts that I was toying around with is the idea that maybe users would be entitled to have an unfiltered option, right? The way that we know that this currently works, YouTube as well, YouTube has indicated that if your content is what they claim to be borderline, then they will just simply reduce the distribution on that piece of content or even on the entire channel. What that means is, most people will search for content in order to find something. Like you may have searched, Robert Gruler or R&R Law to find this channel. Well, once you land on the channel, you kind of stop searching, right? And then you'll just click whatever comes up next. You'll say, suggested next, we're going to click over here and click that video, or whatever just automatically plays after the next video. After you're finished watching this, something else will play. And so when they say they're going to stop or limit distribution, they're specifically saying they're not going to put other content in the automatic watch next, or they're not going to suggest it in the sidebar, or if you put it in a search, you're not going to show up in search. And so what if there was an option for users to just say, I don't want the filters anymore. I don't want you to tell me what's borderline content or not. I don't want you to show me what you think I am interested in. Just show me my timeline in a chronological order. Just whatever's there, just there, right? And you have that option. Or you have the option to go to PG settings, or you have the option to go with the most controversial, sort of like a Reddit or these different places where you can sort by what you get. And then that might give people more ability to be less filtered by these platforms. I'm not sure that, that would be something that they would willingly implement, but I would be very curious to see how that might solve this, because I think what Steven's saying is, they're putting out content thinking that they're playing in an even playground, and that's not really the case. And users don't know any better. And so maybe there's a way we can improve that. Here's another clip from Steven earlier today.
What is it that we want from Facebook? It's not getting a post up here or there.
No. The very first thing that we're looking for is injunctive relief. The specific lawsuit, the specific statutes that we're using in this lawsuit focuses mainly on getting them to just, in a word, stop it. Just to simply stop.
Stop it.
Hey. Stop it. Stop all of it. Stop throttling. Stop secretly throttling. Stop expressly throttling. Stop doing all of the different things that are anti-competitive behavior, that are unfair competition. Stop listening to certain media companies tell you, oh, I don't like this other media company. Shut down their page, throttle their ads, throttle their users, keep their users from being able to see or even like their particular posts. And that's the difference that we're going to be employing here.
Yeah, that sounds.
Yeah, I like the idea. I like where they're going with it. I am not overly optimistic, and I hate to throw shade on it. I'm not trying to do that here. I wish them very, very much success on this, because I think this is a big problem. One of the biggest problems, I think, currently, because a lot of people are feeling like they don't have a voice, and that is not good if you want a participatory democracy, if you want people to be able to share their views and not feel like they're getting shafted by these big entities. What you're going to do if you throw those people into a corner and say, you can't communicate, you can't play with us anymore, it's going to cause a lot of resentment and a lot of anger. Now, that being said, what are the courts going to do with this? Are they going to issue an order to literally tell Facebook to stop censoring conservatives? Not in my mind. I don't think at all. I think it'll probably fall along the same road as the Parler lawsuit did. Parler was asking the court to tell Amazon to turn their servers back on, right? Literally just turn the servers on, because we have an entire platform that we've built on the back of their servers. And so there was a lot more at stake. Parler had lost something massive, something catastrophic, which was their entire platform. I mean, basically the company, I think, is, I'm not sure what the status is currently, but largely many people were saying they're dead. They're dead in the water because they can't go anywhere. They were deplatformed from everything else. I think from their payment processor, their web server, their domain registrar, basically everything. And so here, what Steven is talking about is, what did they lose? What was the harm? Well, the harm is that, maybe they don't get to reach as many users. They don't get to do whatever. And, there's just kind of, it's a little bit more abstract. It's out there in the open. Whereas Parler lost something dramatic, and they still were not granted an injunction. The court still said, hey, it's Amazon. They can do whatever they want. If I can suspect if I have a suspicion on this one, it's going to be that the court's probably going to rule the same way on Stephen's lawsuit. I hope that's not the case. I'm sending good vibes my way on that, but we'll see where that one shakes out. Now, speaking of Facebook, Project Veritas was out over the weekend, or I think earlier this morning, and they released a new video. Miss Faith has a clip of it for us here, but here's what it says. Facebook insider leaks hours of video of Zuckerberg and execs admitting they have, quote, too much power, and Facebook, quote, wants to, quote, work with Biden on some of their top priorities. Biden issued a number of executive orders we as a company really care quite deeply about. And so this was sort of floating around as a major breaking news that there's secret video of Zuckerberg, but I'm not real sure that this is that consequential. I haven't seen this clip though. Maybe this will change my mind.
In his first day, President Biden already issued a number of executive orders on areas that we as a company really care quite deeply about.
But there has been quite a lot of disquiet expressed by many leaders around the world, from the president of Mexico to Alexander Navalny in Russia, and Chancellor Angela Merkel, and others saying, well, this shows that private companies have got too much power and they should be only making these decisions in a way that is framed by democratically agreed rules. We agree with that. We agree with that. Mark will be very clear about that. That ideally, we wouldn't be taking these decisions on our own. We would be taking these decisions in line with and in conformity with democratically agreed rules and principles. And at the moment, those democratically agreed rules don't exist. We still have to take decisions in real time.
We have a system that is able to freeze commenting on threads in cases where our systems are detecting that there may be a thread that has hate speech or violence sort of in the comments. These are all things we've built over the past 3-4 years as part of our investments into the integrity space, our efforts to protect elections.
I wonder whether or not we can use Oculus to help a white police officer understand what it feels like to be a young black man who's stopped and searched and arrested by the police. And I want every major decision to run through a civil rights lens.
I think that these were all important and positive steps, and I am looking forward to opportunities where Facebook is going to be able to work together with this new administration on some of their top priorities, starting with the COVID response.
Yeah, so I don't have any particular real beef with anything that happened there. To me, it sounded like a very bland, pre-scripted set of clips that, people will give to a firm or company-wide message like that. I just didn't see anything there particularly troublesome. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg wanting to work with the next administration. I think every CEO would say that. Every single person in charge would say, yeah, we want to work with the next administration. We don't want them to come and shut us down or impose, new taxes or more regulations that are going to be detrimental to our business. So I think any, sane CEO would say something like that. A lot of the other stuff is just pretty typical. I think we already knew all of this was going on. We knew that they were limiting reach. We knew that they were censoring certain political comments. We knew that they were doing things to, stop people from liking and sharing certain comments that they deem to be hateful or troublesome. And so all pretty standard stuff. We have another comment there about using Oculus for civil rights stuff, and I'm not sure how that necessarily relates to what they do there in Facebook, but it's kind of the typical stuff that you would see out of a major tech company based out of Silicon Valley that is dealing with these types of issues. So Project Veritas sometimes hits home runs, other times they release stuff, and I think it's just pretty run of the mill. I think that, truthfully, could you fault any CEO for saying that? I'd probably imagine that if you looked hard enough, you'd probably see that Zuckerberg said something similar when Trump went into office. They want to work with the administration. Not a good business model to go and just be automatically adversarial with the government. Typically doesn't work out. So unless you're a defense attorney, that's our job, is to be adversarial against the government. But, not a lot there in my opinion, but still interesting to see sort of how they think and operate on the inside. Every time I watch Zuckerberg speak, it feels to me like he's just reading a script, or somebody has like a gun to the back of his head. He's like, yes, we also want the administration to be performing well. We want to agree. We want to do these things. It's like, it feels very scripted to me, but Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just how Zuckerberg is. What do I know? All right, so let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk about the Trump impeachment team, because there was a lot of kerfuffle over the weekend about who was going to be on the team. We've got a trial scheduled to start next week, and largely it has been unsettled at this point in time, which is not particularly good. You want to have your defense team ready before you go to trial. Typically not a week before either, but this is where we're at. They're moving forward with the impeachment, so Trump has to respond. This article comes over from CNN. Trump's impeachment defense team leaves less than 2 weeks before trial. And this is what I'm talking about that happened over the weekend. This was on Sunday. Former President Donald Trump, 5 impeachment defense attorneys have left a little more than a week before his trial was set to begin, according to people familiar with the case, over a disagreement over his legal strategy. It was a dramatic development in the second impeachment trial for Trump. He struggled to find lawyers to take his case. Legal briefs are due next week, and a trial is set to begin only days later. And they're saying here that Trump is still hanging on to this election fraud charade. They're saying he is without legal representation. Well, that changed. Butch Bowers, Deborah Barbier were expected to be 2 of the lead attorneys. They are no longer on the team. They said it was a mutual decision for both to leave the legal team. As the lead attorney, Bowers assembled the team. Josh Howard, a North Carolina attorney who was also recently added, also recently left, along with a guy named Johnny Gasser, Greg Harris, both from South Carolina. Instead, in lieu of them, we now have some new attorneys. So Trump names a new defense team ahead of the Senate impeachment trial. Over from NPR, we'll see that Trump was in need of new representation, and now leading the team, we have a guy named David Scone and Bruce Castor Jr. So we're going to tell you a little bit more about both those here in a quick second. The trial over Trump's role in the Capitol attack in early January is set for February 9th. So that's going to be next week. That is going to be on Tuesdays when it's going to start. In his statement, Trump says, notably, well, let's look at the statement itself. 45th President Donald J. Trump announces a legal team. 45th President Donald Trump announced the highly respected trial lawyers David Scone and Bruce L. Castor will head his impeachment defense team, bringing national profiles and significant trial experience to high-profile cases to the effort. Notably, Scone has already been working with the 45th President and other advisors to prepare for the upcoming trial. Both Scone and Castor agree this impeachment is unconstitutional, a fact 45 senators voted for in an agreement last week. It's an honor to serve and represent the 45th president, said Scone. Castor added, I consider it a privilege to represent the 45th president. You like how they keep using this word, 45th president? Why do they keep saying that? All right. Why do they keep, is that because they don't want to say former president? Is that why? The strength of our Constitution is about to be tested like never before in our history. It is strong and resilient, a document written for the ages, and it will triumph over partisanship yet again and always. So let's take a look at who these 2 attorneys are. Largely, I think that this is kind of academic at this point, if I can be frank. I think that Donald Trump is not going to get convicted. We already saw that 45 senators said that this is unconstitutional. As long as 45 senators vote not to convict him because it's unconstitutional, he is not convicted. So, I just don't, it would be very hypocritical of them to flip their vote suddenly, but we don't know what evidence is going to be presented, and so maybe something will come up next week that will change that. Let's take a look at these 2 new lawyers. We got David Scone. He's an attorney at law. He's a federal criminal defense and civil rights lawyer. So right in my wheelhouse. We like these types of people. Scone has offices in New York and Alabama. He says he takes cases from all around the countries and overseas. It mainly focuses on the litigation of complex civil and criminal cases before trial and appellate courts, which is good, right? He looks like he's got some years of experience under him. He serves as the chairperson of the ABA, which is the American Bar Association. They have a criminal justice subcommittee and the civil rights committee. He's a legal commentator on television, according to the AP. He recently represented the Trump ally Roger Stone during a sentencing appeal. Stone dropped that appeal. Trump commuted his prior sentence. The former president later granted him a pardon for lying to Congress. Scone also met with the accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein before his death. So you know that this guy is probably charges a lot because Epstein had a lot of money. Before his death, NPR reports, he said publicly that he doesn't believe Epstein killed himself in a New York prison. Do you think Epstein killed himself? I guess that's up for debate still. Maybe not. I don't know. Don't want to be labeled a conspiracy theorist because conspiracy theorists are dangerous, according to this new administration. Let's take a look at another attorney who is on the team. We have Bruce L. Castor Jr. This guy was a district attorney in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania from 2000 until 2008, which means he was a prosecutor. prosecutors. All right. Well, during that time, he decided against charging Bill Cosby in a sex crime case, the AP reports. So they're obviously not happy about that. He had said that he thought Cosby should have been arrested, but that there wasn't strong enough evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So he has flipped. You know, when we talk about this at our firm and other firms, we talk about pure blood defense attorneys, not prosecutors, okay, who become defense attorneys, people who were born into defense law, molded by it, shaped by it. That's what we have here at our firm. This guy's not one of them, but we're glad he joined the side of righteousness. So Bruce L. Castor is now joining the Trump team, and he's a defense attorney. Cosby was later convicted, as we all know. After serving as a district attorney, he was a commissioner for Montgomery County until 2016, and later as the acting attorney general. He said in a release Sunday he considers it to be a privilege, and it's going to be strong and resilient. So, you know, we're going to keep seeing how this impeachment stuff develops. We're scheduled for this next week. I don't know yet whether this is going to be a long, blown-out thing or a very short, sort of condensed and consolidated trial. I would guess that it's going to try to be condensed and consolidated just so they can move on with this. I'm not real sure that any one of the political parties has a lot of interest in seeing this thing drag out for weeks and weeks. We saw that there was a sort of a snap impeachment where the evidence in front of the House was basically non-existent. They drafted some article of impeachment, passed it in the House, sent it over to the Senate. They delayed it a little bit. They could have started this impeachment trial sooner, but they needed to get some of Biden's people confirmed. Now that that has happened, we're going to see what the structure of this looks like. So we'll have some continuing news on that, but we're going to really spend some time on it next week when it gets well underway. The big story of the day is a news story out of Rochester, and this involves police officers pepper spraying a 9-year-old girl who's in handcuffs, who's already in the back of a police car. So just another, ridiculous situation here out of Rochester. We've already talked about Rochester a little bit. I want to go through this in some great detail. We're going to go through a couple articles. Then we have the body camera footage that we're going to break down clip by clip. It's about 20 minutes. We're not going to play the whole thing. I'm going to skip over some parts here and there. I want to just show you it for context, because what you see floating around on the internet right now are a lot of the clips, like the 2-minute clips. And you just, people see those 2 minutes or the 30 seconds in most situations, and they just don't know how much, how to process that. The headline sounds really bad, but is it, was it really bad? You can be the one to decide. And I think you're going to understand where I stand on this one. But let's break this down. Now, before we do, keep this in mind. There are a lot of people who, I've said this before on the channel, will sort of bundle themselves into their political ideologies. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you just sort of, put yourself into that tribe. I have done this myself. I try not to do this, where I'll put myself in one particular bundle. I'll just say, all right, well, that's, that sounds like me. Therefore, anything that is closely connected to that bundle, I'm just going to accept as my own belief or my own ideology without giving it any critical thought. And I see this happen a lot with people when it comes to these types of issues. You'll have a lot of Republicans on one hand who will say things like, well, cops are heroes, and every single cop is out there risking their life every single day, and there's no way that they are racist or they are, overly burdensome or they are engaging in some form of brutality. There's no such thing as this blue shield or this blue code of silence. Everything they do is right and accurate, which has always been strange to me, because conservatives traditionally have a lot of issues with big government, right? Big bureaucracies, big agencies are sort of the worst thing in the world because they're inefficient, there's no accountability, there's no transparency, and it's a huge problem. And I agree with that sort of categorization, by the way. But suddenly, if we're talking about the police, none of those same concepts apply. It's no longer about a big bureaucracy. It's no longer about a lack of accountability, because the police are in a different category, a different bucket. And we see these same kind of things happen out on the other side, the Democratic side, right? Every single cop is a racist. Every single cop out there wants to eliminate black people. It's been this huge, just overburdensome, problematic thing. And the police need to be reformed, and there's no accountability and there's no transparency there. And so we got to just defund the police. Everything needs to be thrown right out the window. The whole department needs to be eliminated. Meanwhile, they turn around and they just build bureaucracy after bureaucracy after bureaucracy. And so there's a lot of hypocrisy over there as well. So when we go through these types of stories, I just want to pause and just note, this is, in my mind, something where we want to look at this with some humanity. We want to just analyze this from a human perspective, because this involves a 9-year-old girl, it involves a mother, it involves something like 9 other police officers, and they're all in a very difficult situation. And so the point of this is not to just slam dunk on either side. When I go through these stories, it's not to go out there and say all cops are bad, or all criminals are bad, or whatever it is. Everybody wants to identify with one particular ideology. That's not what I want to do when I go through this stuff. I don't want to be, somebody who's slamming on race or slamming on cops. I just want to understand and dissect what the hell is going on here, where it seems okay and it seems justified to mace, pepper spray a 9-year-old girl in the back of a car. How do we account for that? And now that we know that this thing happens, how do we improve our justice system so that this stuff doesn't continue to happen? And we don't need to go one side or the other. We don't need to say, that all cops should be believed and everything they do is legitimate and kosher, and we don't even have to think twice about it. On the other side, maybe it's not a good idea to defund every single police department and put every officer out on the streets. There's probably a solution in the middle here. And the point of going through and having this dialogue is to see if we can identify it without getting hysterical, without jumping to conclusions, without bundling ourselves into one particular ideology. So let's get into it. This is an article from NBC New York. It says here, two videos actually show Rochester officers handcuff and pepper spray a 9-year-old. 2 body camera videos, which we're going to cover today, came out on Sunday. They were dealing and restraining with a distraught 9-year-old girl who was handcuffed and sprayed with what police called an irritant. Okay, it's pepper spray. The Democrat and the Chronicle reported that prior to the release of the videos, Rochester Mayor Lovely Warren expressed her concern for the, quote, child that was harmed during the incident that happened on Friday. And she said, I have a 10-year-old child. So she's a child. She's a baby. And this video as a mother is not anything you want to see. A total of 9 officers and supervisors responded to a report of family trouble on Friday. The girl can be heard on body camera from the officers from the scene screaming frantically for her father as the officers try to restrain her. At a news conference on Sunday, the deputy police chief, Andre Anderson, described the girl as suicidal. She indicated she wanted to kill herself and she wanted to kill her mom, she said. Okay, 9-year-old girl. Officers tried to force the girl into a patrol car, but she pulled away and kicked them. In a statement Sunday, the police department said that this action, quote, required an officer to take the girl down to the ground. So because a 9-year-old kicked an officer, there's a requirement in their police procedures that says they got to do something about it. So I'd be very curious if this requirement, quote, is actually in writing anywhere. If it says if somebody's underage, if somebody's 9-year-old, what is the requirement? Is that accurate? I'm going to doubt it. Then the department said, quote, for the minor's safety and at the request of the custodial parent on scene, the child was handcuffed and put in the back of a police car as they waited for an ambulance. Police said the girl disobeyed commands to put her feet in the car, which she did. We're going to see that, right? That's accurate. An officer was then, quote, required, and this is in quotes, I didn't quote this up, from the article, to spray an irritant, also in quotes, in the handcuffed girl's face, said the department on Saturday. So the department is putting those things in quotes and saying that. At a Sunday news conference, Police Chief Cynthia Harriet Sullivan described the irritant as pepper spray. She declined to defend the officer's actions. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that a 9-year-old to have pepper sprayed is okay. It's not, she said. I don't see that as who we are as a department, and we're going to do the work we have to do to ensure these kind of things don't happen, which I think is fair. That's what we all want to. We all want to prevent this stuff from happening. Police said the girl was eventually taken to the general hospital. She received services and all the care that she needed. The Rochester Police Accountability Board is reviewing the incident. Our community needs to see exactly what happened on Avenue B, said the PAB, which is the Police Accountability Board, Executive Director Connor Dwyer Reynolds. They have faced scrutiny since the death of Daniel Prude last year. Do you remember Daniel Prude? We spent a lot of time talking about that case, and it was really horrendous. It was really one of the most horrific cases I think we've covered on this channel, and we've covered a lot of them. We've covered George Floyd, which was also up there. We covered Rayshard Brooks. We covered Ahmaud Arbery. We've covered Breonna Taylor. We've covered a lot of them. Okay, they're all horrendous. But what happened with Daniel Prude was also out of Rochester. This was a scene from Daniel Prude. We covered this one. We have a number of officers literally, putting a hood over a, half naked, in this film, he was totally naked man on the side of the road. And then they did this plank on his body where this officer was literally leaning on his head like this, a full plank. That is Daniel Prude's head right there. And so this is happening in Rochester. And this officer is, leaning on his head. And when we went through the video on this story, it was just, horrific. You could hear him literally, collapsing. His windpipe, his head, his neck was all just being crushed by that officer for, I think it was like 90 seconds or 2 minutes. He went to the hospital. I think he sort of coded at the scene, went to the hospital. Of course, he had drugs in his system, if I recall correctly, and he passed away at the hospital. And a lot of it was sort of connected to the physical abuse that he suffered on the scene there. Okay, so that's the context. So you have to think about this, right? This is when we get to this current story, there is a young girl and her mom who are both African American, as the story is going to show. And, very, very recently, middle of last year, just I don't know, 6-7 months ago in Rochester, there was another story where the Rochester police showed up, in my opinion, basically killed this guy, Daniel Prude. And, essentially, as far as I know, not much has happened as a result of that. So if you are in that situation, when the police show up, that might be a possibility. And whether you're white, black, brown, Hispanic, Asian, whatever it is, if you're in a situation where this is happening in your neighborhood, in my mind, you're going to be cognizant of that. And that's going to leave a mark. That's going to help shape your perception of what law enforcement does. This is why it's a problem when law enforcement does these things, because it's not just about that one particular family, that one particular individual. It is which is catastrophic, right, for Daniel Prude and all of that. I'm not trying to sort of mitigate the harm caused to that, but it also spreads and permeates, and it makes people trust law enforcement less and less. So we want law enforcement to do well, do good, and follow the law and not engage in any of this brutality stuff. When they do, it is catastrophic, and it trickles down. It's the first domino that will knock in a bunch of other dominoes, and it's going to lead to more and more of these types of situations. So another story we see here, it says, I want my dad. Police pepper sprayed and handcuffed a 9-year-old girl. As seen on the video, an officer walked up to a child on a residential street. The 9-year-old did not want to speak with him. He ran up and grabbed her. We're going to show you all of this here in a quick second. The woman identified in the video as the child's mother got involved. She was arguing with the girl. 9-year-old claimed her mom had stabbed her dad and that her father was holding his gut. So I want to just play you or show you some of the language that's being used, because the video is sort of chaotic. And so this is what's going on. 9-year-old girl is sort of running around the street. Cop comes up to her. She says, Mom stabbed dad. Father was holding his gut. Mom said, no, blood is my own, not the father's. She denied stabbing him and asserted the father attacked her. So things escalated, and the mother got right up in the 9-year-old's face. She also says, I got custody to the child. You're my child. So you're going to get your A home, and you're going to have to take your A to the house. The officer separated them. Time passed. Police showed up. Like 8 other cops showed up. The girl called out her father as officers attempted to get into a vehicle. And at one point, you're going to see this in the clip, the officer says, you're acting like a child. And the girl says, I am a child. And then drops some profanity. The pivotal moment arrived when cops got the child mostly into the vehicle, but struggled to close the door. The 9-year-old then said the handcuffs were too tight. This is your last chance. Otherwise, pepper spray is going into your eyeballs, said a female officer. We're going to play all this for you. The girl continued to plead for her father. I want my dad. She continued to cry. Just spray her at this point, said the view of another officer, a male who was on the other side of her in the car. And that's exactly what happened. He says, I got her. He added, authorities did not release the name of the child or the mother or the officers involved, because the cops never get named until people do some digging. So we went through, we found the video. This is what it looks like, and I wanted to just show you this. It's a 10-minute video. Part 1 is 10 minutes. We're not going to play the whole 10 minutes, but we are going to go through it. And this is part 1 of 2, and this was on YouTube, and you can see 380 thumbs up, 1.1 thousand thumbs down, and the comments are turned off, so they're not allowing anybody to comment. This was posted over by the Rochester, New York Police Department. It's got 200,000 views as of yesterday, and it is unlisted. Okay, so people are just sharing this link. You can't find this if you go on YouTube and search for it. Same with part 2, same story, same type of metrics, same types of numbers. And so they posted this. They don't want you to comment on it. They don't want you to search for it. They don't want it to show up anywhere else on YouTube. You have to have the link. So if you want the links, we have them saved in our slides, which, like I said, you can grab over on locals. So this is, let's see, this is the 1 minute of the officer walking up. So you can see right in the middle of Rochester, ton of snow. This gal there's no sound right now. And this officer is just walking up. So this person's just, shoveling snow. And we're going to see that as they get closer to the young girl in question, the sound's going to come on, and then he starts basically shouting at her to stop. So he's just walking right on down the street, doesn't really know where, we don't really see anything or see. Okay, so there the sound comes on.
Come here. Come here. Stop. You're not in trouble. Come here.
All right, so there's the girl walking right around the corner.
Come here.
And as soon as she turns, he's going to run over.
I'm not going to walk all the way down the street for you. Come here. It's freezing out.
Saying it's cold, it's freezing. So there he goes after her. All right, and so this is where they make contact. Now, we don't really know where she was coming from. We don't know who called 911. There was a family disturbance going on. We're going to see the mom come out of the residence here very soon. But I want you to pay close attention to this. So when I clip over to the next clip, you're going to see that. Listen to the girl. Listen to what happens. The officer just comes right up to her. Is running up to her at this point in time. And when he makes contact, you can hear her wince. You can hear her like almost scream a little bit under her breath. And I why would that happen? It's probably because he's grabbing the hell out of her. And if you watch closely, you can see that there's there's contact there, sort of right at the same time that she is wincing. So, this is not unusual. Officers do not like people to flee from them at all. They don't like anybody to challenge their authority really in any way. And if you do that, then they're going to let you know, especially if you're a young girl like this. He's in my opinion, I don't know if this is true or not, but you can watch and decide for yourself. Sounds like he's giving her a nice, good squeeze, grabbing the neck, grabbing somewhere that is painful, and she expresses that through her voice. So this is the next clip as he's approaching her.
Stop.
No.
Stop. 247.
Okay, so we got some sensors.
247. I got her at 76 Harris. Just start a rig.
Get off of me!
Stop. What's going on?
Get off of me!
What's going on?
Get off of me!
I'm not gonna get off.
Get off!
Okay, so now they're kind of fighting over that bag.
How can I help?
Get off of me!
No, because
I don't
you're not
want to be
gonna run. Harris, you're not gonna run away from me, okay? Because I'm gonna have to chase you.
All right, so they're kind of there just talking for a little bit, and he says, "You're not going to run away from me. I'm going to catch you. What's going on? What's going on? What's the problem here?"
Huh?
And
I'm not going.
Huh?
I'm not going.
That's fine. But what did you tell your mom?
What?
What happened? Why are you so upset?
She stabbed my dad.
Who did?
Okay. All right, so
she did? Okay.
My blood you seen off of my lip. The fuck? No, it was not, because when he walked in.
All right, so let's play that one more time. He says specifically that she stabbed my dad. Watch.
Huh?
I'm not going.
Huh?
I'm not going.
That's fine. But what did you tell your mom?
What?
What happened? Why are you so upset?
She stabbed my dad.
Who did?
Her.
She
She
did?
stabbed my dad.
Okay.
My blood you seen off of my lip. The fuck? No, it was not, because when he walked in the house, he was holding his stomach. It was my blood. How the hell? So your lip gonna bleed all the way down to your stomach?
All right, so they're getting in an argument now. She's saying, that was my blood. He said, you stabbed my dad. She said, what are you, nuts? That's my blood. That is, something that, he hit me in the lip, and then he got me in a headlock. So you're going to hear a lot of screaming back and forth about that. And then in this next clip, I'm not going to, there's a lot of screaming back and forth, so I'm going to try to spare you some of the screaming. But in this next clip, what happens is the mom is coming out now and just going after this kid. So not a good situation in general, right? Cops are there. This kid is not, I would say behaving properly, but you don't know what happened on the inside. You don't know if the kid did see something like that happen. It sounds like there absolutely was an altercation that was taking place because the mom was bleeding. The dad apparently had the mom in a headlock. The mom's lip was bleeding. The mom had blood all over, or I think the dad had blood all over his shirt from the headlock. And so it looks like he may have gotten stabbed. And so this little girl is just freaked out badly, right? And you don't blame her for a minute. So this cop now comes onto the scene and is trying to calm the situation down, grabs her. Don't know if it was a wince or not or whatever that was. But now mom comes out and is not particularly helping the situation. She comes out, starts screaming at the kid. Profanity warning for this next clip.
That's why she's done. It's okay. You sit there and watch this man put his hands on me all the time. All the time.
Did you stab him?
No, I didn't. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
How do you know that?
Because
how do you know that?
Yes, because when he walked in the
come
house,
to my car, let's
when he
talk.
walked
It's
in the
freezing
house,
out. Come on.
he was holding. Okay, so your lip gonna go with his blood. And
He has me in the headlock.
I'm not
So
saying.
you stabbed him?
I'm sitting here arguing with it. Yeah, so I stabbed him.
Yes, you did.
I just put the police on him. They gonna find him.
No, he is. No.
They gonna find him.
Jared, just
And
come
we
with
gonna
me to
see.
my
You
car,
gonna get
alright?
your
Let's
ass
talk.
for sitting here lying.
I'm not.
Come on.
I'm not going to.
First of all, Steviana, you go.
All right, so what you can't hear right there, or maybe you can, but the officer is repeatedly asking her to come to the car. Come to the car. Just come to the car with me. Come on, come to the car. She says, no, I'm not. No, I'm not going to go. I don't want to go to the car. And the officer just keeps going. So here is the rest of that.
I'm gonna bring your ass to this motherfucking house, and I'm gonna ask you one more time. You gonna bring your ass to this house if I yoke your ass up and drag you home? I got custody. You're my child, so you gonna take your ass home right now.
All right, so that's her. That's mom getting really close into daughter, and she's, you're my daughter. Get your ass home. I've got custody. I'm gonna basically pick you up and drag you home. And so here you can see mom and daughter just, sort of right at each other's face. Cop standing right there. The cop, to me, doesn't sound particularly concerned about the stabbing, because he kind of says back to mom, he goes, did you stab him? She said, no, I didn't stab him, and then she starts lacing back into her daughter. So, we can't see what else is going on. We don't know if there are other units that are investigating the home. We don't know, like I said, who called 911. There was a domestic disturbance going on. We don't know what's on the 911 call or what they heard. We don't know if they have anybody's names yet. We're going to hear later on in the story that they're asking about this young girl's name, and they kind of don't know what it is. And I think we hear about it at the very end of the clip, but they don't know, right? So from an officer's perspective, they could have shown up. Somebody could have gotten stabbed. There could be somebody loose with a weapon. They don't know. But this officer, in my mind, didn't seem particularly concerned about it because of the fact that did you stab him? And she says, no, I didn't stab him. So it was now sort of not the primary focus of the investigation. That had changed. Now it's about this little girl and this mom having a dispute. So let's go on to the next clip. Mom goes after the kid. We pick up right here.
And you gonna take your ass in the house.
All right, come on.
Okay, so now the cop is breaking that up.
Go the fuck in the house now.
Come on.
Okay, the little girl is crying.
Come on. Man,
I wish you might.
if you want my help, just get up. all right?
You might.
Mom grabbed the backpack, is walking back inside.
Stop.
Who the fuck is you talking to like that?
Get away.
Who the fuck is you talking to like that?
So that's
Who
mom's.
is you talking to like that?
No.
Come on, you gotta come with me. You gotta come with me.
Mom screaming at the
Talking to
kid.
like that.
Come on, dear. All right,
Kids
listen,
now.
do me a
You gotta
favor.
be fucked
Do me a
up.
favor. Go back to the house. All right?
All right, so mom goes after the kid. Cop tells her, go back inside. You need to, leave us alone. Mom's in the face. Who you talking to like that? F. Not a particularly good situation. Then we get to the next clip, and there are bystanders
You're not running away
poking
from
around.
You're not running away.
So the kid is still trying to break free.
Come on.
Can I help ya?
Come on.
Neighbors are coming through. Bystanders are walking up. Mom is screaming at the bystanders and at that car that was driving by.
Come on.
Can I help you? Can I
All
help
right,
you?
let's go. Stop. Enough. Enough.
All right, so that just kind of hangs out. They're sort of the cop is still dragging the little girl down the road to continue with the investigation and the arrest here shortly enough. And then a second unit shows up. Let's take a look here.
Stop.
Okay. All right, the body camera falls off right now. So the little girl, there's a second unit.
Stop.
Okay, so
You gotta tell this officer where you told me.
screaming for dad. I want my dad. I want my dad.
247. We don't need you here. Hey, get back in your house.
No, I want my dad.
You're not gonna run off.
I want my dad.
So she's very upset.
Stop.
I want my dad. I'm not getting in no car.
She says, I'm not getting in a car, so body camera falls off.
I want my dad. No.
She's kicking the cops. Body camera's still on the floor. We got two grown men who control a 9-year-old girl.
Okay, wait, my mom, she's pregnant though.
You done?
My mom pregnant. Yeah.
She's saying my mom's pregnant. My mom's pregnant. Okay, so you hear the handcuffs. They just went on.
I want my dad.
Cop looks down, grabs his body camera.
Lost for SR.
Other neighbors are walking by.
Mom's still trying
Wait,
to fight.
please. Can you go help my mom? She's pregnant.
Go help my mom. She's pregnant, little girl says. And she's basically in the snow right now. So we have this officer here who is, one of the two who showed up on the scene. His body camera fell off. That's him looking back down at the camera. And then this is a little girl. So she's down in the snow. She's sort of in handcuffs at this point in time, laying on the ground. And then she's still calling for her dad. The second unit shows up. And then we pick it back up in this next clip.
Please.
Let's go.
So,
get up.
I want my dad.
Get up.
I want my dad.
Okay, so she's just drenched in snow, covered in snow.
I want my dad.
I got one car out here.
All right, and now the body camera goes black. Okay, now listen. It's still playing, but it just went black, and it actually stays black for about 2 minutes. So let's just listen in on some of the audio that was not visible. So I think the officer, put his body camera on in reverse, or he's got it covered, but it's still recording.
What are you doing? Because you're going to go to jail now, too.
Cops yelling at someone else, you're going to go to jail now, too. All right, so that goes on for about 2 minutes, and the cop is, you can hear her yelling. She's still screaming, "I want my dad! I want my dad! I want my dad!" And another officer is saying, "Listen, if you don't do something, you're going to go to jail too." I can hear him screaming that in the background, and then we get about 2 minutes go by, and when we come back, you're going to see that 9 cars are there, 9 other police officers. So half the department comes just rolling in there. Oh my gosh, we got a 9-year-old we can't control. Everybody show up. And that's what happened. So this is coming out of the dark. This is coming out of the black body camera. And then we see sort of what the situation looks like. All right, so I'm not sure why that didn't play. Let me try that one more time. Okay, so there it comes out. And look at the scene. Now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 officers.
Mom to jail too.
We're going to take mom to jail too, is what they said. Neighbors are out. Multiple police are now there for a 9-year-old girl and mom. Maybe a stabbing. We don't know.
Her hands are freezing.
Look at me. Look at me. Don't look anywhere else.
Get in the car. I'm done telling you. Get in the car.
This is it, hon.
Okay.
Get in the car.
All right.
247.
All right, so you could see there that there is now a female officer on scene. So for about that 2 minutes of the blackout of the body camera, there are other officers there. So presumably many of them also have body cameras. We can't see that yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to clip over to the next video, which is part 2. So part 1 is them basically getting her into the car. Then we're going to pick it up from a different officer, from a different body camera. And you can see what I'm counting here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the one side. On the other side, there are a number of other officers there as well. So let's take a look at this next clip and see what's happening here. Little girl is still screaming. We have about 6, 7 guys there. And we have a female officer who's now working with a little girl.
Yeah, I'm good. Just need a neighborhood check. Mom's out here. Mom's out here trying to fight people driving by.
I'll go right now.
129. She's the one that called originally.
Okay, what do you want, a depot or what?
Okay, mom called originally, they said.
I'm ready to take mom.
I'll take mom. Stress and I'll go around.
All right, so did you see what happened? I'm ready to take mom. That cop just goes right off to go get her.
I mean, I really...
All right, so that one officer says, well, I'm ready to go get mom. Other cop says, I'll go get mom. No problem. He just showed up. Probably has no idea what the hell's going on, but he's antsy to go make an arrest. So he's going to go get mom, and then we're going to go around the other side of the car. So remember, the little girl is now on the driver's side of the vehicle. There is a female officer who's now sort of working with her, to some degree, trying to get her in the car. She's in handcuffs. She's got a bunch of snow on her. At some point in time, she says, hey, I'm covered in snow. Can you get the snow off me? And then the officer says, yeah, we'll work on that. So there's this. Now we have a different body camera from a different officer who's coming around the other side of the vehicle on the driver's side.
You're gonna be listen, you gotta tell this officer.
I want my dad. I'm not going nowhere. I want my dad.
We don't need you. Hey, get back in your house.
Okay, so you see.
Go have a seat.
No.
All right, so.
I'm not gonna run off.
So I jumped the gun on this a little bit. So when we go to the second clip, we actually back up in time. So now we're going back. So this is the other officer. Remember when she was first arrested or first put in handcuffs and sort of thrown into the ground, there were two officers there. We only saw the one. Now this is from the angle of the other cop. And so what we'll see here is his perspective. We're going to go through the same sequence of events. So she's going to be back down on the ground, and then the other cop is going to go talk to the other guys, and then we're going to pick it right back up. So this is where we are.
I want my dad.
You're gonna be fine. Stop.
I want my dad. I'm not getting in no car until I see my dad.
Here, just stop for a second.
I want my dad.
Control 47, I'm in.
I want my dad. No.
Stop. Don't kick us, dear.
Stop! Oh my God!
Stop, dude. Just relax.
Okay.
You
Wait,
done?
my mom, she's pregnant.
Are you done?
My mom's pregnant.
My mom's pregnant.
Stop.
I want my dad.
Stop. You good? 2-4, Sean. I know.
All right, so we just keep moving on, and then we're going to see this other officer. Now, this is when this is back from the perspective of one officer is coming on. They're putting her in on the driver's side, and another officer goes around to the passenger side and is trying to sort of pull her in that direction.
You've had your chances. What are you doing? Okay? You've had your chances. What are you doing? What are you doing? Because you're going to go to jail now, too.
I want my dad. Wait, I just want to see my dad, please. For the last time. I want my dad.
Get in the car.
I demand it.
I don't care what you demand. Let's go. She's got her leg underneath my car.
Stop. I want my dad. I want my dad.
Stop or you're going to get yourself hurt.
Stop. He's hurting me. I want to. Oh my God.
Then get in the car.
Please help somebody.
9 years old, folks.
I want my dad. Stop. Stop.
Sit up.
No.
You're acting like a child.
I want to.
Stop.
I am a child. The fuck.
I just went back to the house. Stand up. Stand up.
All right, and you may not have heard that, but the officer says, stop it, you're acting like a child. And she says, I am a child. What the and she drops it, right? 9 years old. It's like these cops have never dealt with somebody who didn't want to get in the back of a car before. Imagine if this was a grown-ass man. What would they do? Shoot him? At least she didn't get shot. It's mind-blowing to me that they had this much difficulty working with a 9-year-old. Let's go on. We're not even at the good part yet. The horrible part. By good.
Then stand up.
So this goes on. Take a look at the time down here. We're at 15:50:12.
I can't. She's on the ground.
And so they're spending about a minute at this point in time.
Stand up.
Okay, she's almost in the car. Those are her hands right there. Her hands are behind her back. She's handcuffed.
Can you let go over? I got her. I got her.
The female officer says, I got her.
Let go, but you gotta stand up. Stand up. Will you stand up for me? Will you stand? Hey, look at me. Stand up.
I can't the way I'm sitting.
I can't move the way I'm sitting. I can't stand up. Okay, her arms are now up.
A little bit more.
Look. There you go.
Okay, there she is. Her butt's in the seat.
It's okay. I know. Go ahead. Sit back for her. Sit back for him. Okay?
I'll let go if you're gonna stop.
He doesn't pull you, okay? I'll find your dad, okay? But you need to sit back. Put your foot here and sit back.
All right. And so she's still screaming for her dad. I just want my dad. Her butt is in the car now, in the back of the police cruiser. She's in handcuffs. Her hands are literally behind her back. Her butt is seated on the seat. And there's a female officer on the other side of her. There's another officer on the passenger side. And they're sort of trying to negotiate about her getting in the vehicle. Then we're going to hear from the female officer who says, hey, this is your last chance. Otherwise, you're getting pepper spray, and it's going right in your eyeballs. Listen to this.
I'll get your dad, okay? But you need to get warm, otherwise you're gonna get hypothermia. So sit back, okay? I'll get your dad, I promise. Is he here?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll find him, okay? But hey, look at me. I can't find your dad until you sit back and I can close the door, okay? I will find your dad, so sit back. I promise. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Don't look anywhere else. I promise.
Get in the car.
Okay?
I'm telling you. Get in the car.
This is it, hon.
Okay, her butt's still in the car.
Get back in the car then.
You gotta sit back. He won't do it if you sit back. Come on. We'll fix him once you sit in the car. Come on.
I want my dad.
Come on. I'm gonna pepper spray you and I don't want to. So sit back.
I'm going to pepper spray you. I don't want to.
Come on. This is your last chance. Otherwise, pepper spray's going in your eyeballs. Come on, let's go.
Keep me safe for a minute.
Come on.
I want my dad.
Come on. I'm gonna go get him. Now sit back. Come on. I will fix it. I will fix it.
Why don't we separate now, sir?
Let's just sit back.
All right. And that was the last chance that she gets. Now what happens?
Come on. Please sit back. Sit back. Come on. Put your legs in there. It's your last chance.
Last chance.
Last chance. I'm going to go get your dad.
I want my dad.
Come on.
I want to call him.
I will call him. Sit back. Come on. They are losing their patience. Okay?
They're losing their patience. It's been about 3 minutes.
Come on. Good job.
Look at the time.
We're almost there. Come on.
I want my dad.
152:40.
I don't know her name.
Bradstreet, what's her name?
So
Sit back.
Dear, just stop for a second and take a deep breath. Hey, just stop.
Please. I will get your dad.
No,
Otherwise,
you said that you were gonna pepper spray me. No, please, no, stop.
now she's scared that they're going to be pepper spraying her.
Just spray her.
No, I
Just spray her at this point.
Just spray her at this point. There it is.
Dear. I got her. I got her.
Please, wipe my eye. Wipe my eye, please.
9-year-old girl begging.
Unbelievable.
9-year-old girl begging. Wipe my eyes, please. Just wipe my eyes, please, please. Okay, they took about let's look at the time here on this. 15:53:26. What time did she go in the car? About 15:50, right? So it's been about 3.5 minutes, and that was too long. They were losing their patience over that. And so there's nothing else we can do. She's 9. She's not listening. We gave her commands for 3 minutes. I mean, we didn't really even try to talk to her at all. Sit down. Hey, let's go sit down over here. Let's sit on a chair. Let's talk this through. Nope. You've got 9 officers just picking up a 9-year-old girl who is completely distraught because she thinks that her mom just stabbed her dad in the stomach, and she's now being surrounded by a bunch of officers in the same town, the same location in New York, where they, in my opinion, executed a different guy, right? A guy by the name of Daniel Prude for suffering from a bad situation. Okay, he was somebody who was not dangerous. He was naked, and they still killed him. And now they're living in the same circumstance, and they're being approached by 9 different police vehicles with 9 different officers in a horrendous situation, and they can't even negotiate or deal with a 9-year-old girl. Takes them to 3 minutes, and they get frustrated enough and they pepper spray her. These are the officers who were there, who were just standing around. We've got some serious bad popo over here. This guy's a bad officer. This guy's a bad officer. This guy's a bad officer. This is a bad woman. And I'm not particularly happy with all of them. They were standing around, and she just pepper sprayed them because they couldn't get her feet in the car. And that's it. And you said, oh my gosh, as soon as they shut the door, wow, what an ordeal that was. My question is, what would these people think if this happened to their kid? Would they treat their 9-year-old that way? Would they, have, when they were throwing a temper tantrum, when they were having a meltdown, when they're having, let's say, a mental health emergency, when you're in the middle of a situation and your mind is just not functioning because there are dramatic things happening around you, like somebody potentially being stabbed or, half dozen police cars showing up. Let's add into that the fact that you happen to be 9 years old and you don't know anything about how the world works. Maybe there are some other ways to think through this. So, I get very angry when I see this stuff happen. This is not good for anybody. It's not good for these officers. I don't know why they continue to think that they can act this way. There was a 9-year-old girl there and they were just treating her like a hardened criminal. Like this person was responsible for murder or something like that. And they had to pepper spray her and throw her in the back of the car. So I have a lot of problems with these officers. I don't know how you can kind of stand there on the side of the road and watch your fellow man be so inhumane to another person, another human being, and just sort of just go, another day on the job out here in Rochester. Seems pretty troubling. So after the fact, we hear from the police union. And of course, the police union does what the police unions do, and they get very defensive over everything that took place. Here is this guy by the name of Mike Mazzeo on the officer who pepper sprayed a 9-year-old girl. This is what he says.
I can't tell you anything about it. He came to the scene shortly thereafter. They were trying to get her into the car and made a decision. He made a decision there that he thought was the best action to take. It resulted in her no injury to her. Had they had to go and push further and use more force, there's a good chance she could have been hurt worse. It's
they could have shot her.
Very, very difficult to get somebody into the back of a police car like that. And she's 9 years old. Imagine what happens when we have a full-grown individual.
Yeah, you shoot them.
You talk about the psychological impact on the officers, but what about the psychological impact on the 9-year-old girl who had to deal with this traumatic situation?
How about the traumatic situations that she's been dealing with? Did you listen to the words that her mother was saying to her? That's what's sad. That's what's disturbing. That's what officers go home and say, how does that girl have a chance in life? What's that officer supposed to do? What can they do? You know what? Understand how we respond to situations. Let me go from a man with a gun call, to a traffic accident, to a family disturbance, to another incident. After this, those officers probably had to go on to several other calls that night. This isn't happen in a vacuum. Some of those officers probably didn't get a chance to even discuss it until when? Hours later?
Yeah, or maybe they just don't think that way. I shouldn't have called all those officers bad officers. I was trying to make this not particularly political or too volatile. This, in my mind, is just a product of the circumstance, of the culture, of the environment that we allow we cultivate law enforcement to follow. As he just said, this was just another day in the job, right? They may not have even talked about it. They may not have this wasn't even a big deal to them because they probably did it 5 more times with other people the rest of the day. And, it's hard to sort of blame somebody for following the rules of their job. The police department, many people look at a police department like these are heroes, and there are some heroes in police departments and police forces. And so, you work hard, you become an officer, you want to serve your community, and then you get thrust into this culture, into this environment where this type of stuff is acceptable. This type of stuff is looked, favorably upon. Like, oh my goodness, that was just a doozy. If you ever, I used to cater before I went to law school, and I would, we'd cater and we'd all just sort of, have a hell of a night, super busy, just grinding. We'd all sit down at the end of it and go, whoo, man, that was another one. And you don't really think about what you did for the last 6 hours, right? About serving food, delivering entrees, delivering, all these things. And now you're just kind of done. You just go, whew, wow, that was a doozy. I'm sure you've experienced those types of things in your life. And, the same thing is happening here with these cops. They just kind of go about their business. And so, they are doing their job, I would guess, to the best of their ability. And it's probably not something that I should be so quick to rush to judgment on, but I am concerned by people who just sort of allow the humanity to be evaporated from within them. To see a 9-year-old girl with like 9 people standing around there, and they all come to a conclusion that pepper spraying is a good situation, is a good thing to do. Something in my mind would have to, I think, disconnect or be unwired in order for me to go, yeah, that's a good idea, right? That's okay. Let's go ahead and do that. How old is she? 9? That's good. Because if she was 8, wouldn't have gotten the pepper spray. 9, though, that's fair. And, it is difficult to get somebody in the back of a car. Well, maybe the alternative should be don't put her in the back of a car. Why are these policies, why are there these requirements that we just saw from the police department? They responded to the news and said, no, this was required. We had to hit her with an irritant because protocol says so. Well, why the hell does the protocol say that? Shouldn't there be an exception for a 9-year-old girl, or let's say, anybody who's under not double digits? Is that a fair line in the sand to draw? If you're 10 and above, you get the pepper spray. But if you're only single digits, no pepper spray for you. Can we modify the police department policies for this stuff? It is grotesque behavior. I do not think that these officers would want their own children to be treated this way, and it is totally inappropriate. Now to see a police union guy who's standing in front of one of these, blue shield flags over here. Blue shield over here. I'm not sure if this is the American flag with the blue shield. Drives me bananas. It's almost like there's this sort of cult that exists amongst law enforcement officials where as long as you're on the inside of it, you always got to circle the wagons. You always got to, shield yourselves up. And we see the same thing here happening with the police union officials saying, well, could have been worse. Well, what about her mom? Maybe we shouldn't have pepper sprayed her, but they made the best decision that they could. And what about her mom, by the way? Her mom was pretty aggressive, right? So, I guess the police want to give parenting advice now. Like they get to come in and tell a parent how to raise their kid or how that works. I'm not condoning the mother's language or the mother's behavior, but nobody asked the police department for their parental opinion either. They are there to diffuse a scene, and in my opinion, they made it dramatically worse. That little girl is going to be scarred for life, in my opinion, rightfully so, because what happened to her was egregious conduct, and the police who were involved, they don't name who it was. I think I just saw an article that they were suspended, probably with pay, probably not going to be any repercussions for this, probably not going to be any policy changes for this. They're just going to let this thing fly under the radar. We'll see if we hear any more of it. The Rochester mayor did call for change. We hear this all the time from everybody. Change. We got to change everything. Well, what the hell are we changing? Okay, I've had many proposals for how we can improve the justice system. Many of them. I've gone through them at length a long time ago, about 6 months ago, when all of the summer unrest was happening. I was wondering, we saw a lot of activity. For a long part, for a lot of my time as a criminal defense attorney, I was for the first time excited to see that enough people were sort of, angered about what we see happening in our justice system and demanding change. But then that demand for change sort of bubbled over and it spilled out into, torching buildings and just burning down restaurants and used car dealerships and things like that. That was a major bummer. That was not the type of change that we were hoping for. And I think it set back the criminal justice reform movement by, 20 years, if I had to guess. There was a lot of momentum in this country after George Floyd was murdered, and we were seeing people sort of align and unify and say, you know what, maybe this police department thing is, maybe it's time to just revisit it a little bit. We haven't had, significant crime bill since Joe Biden passed his crime bill in 1994. It's been sort of, incremental policy changes since the 90s, and maybe it's time to revisit it. And things were moving in the right direction. Everybody was calling for change. And then suddenly the movement got co-opted and now people started burning buildings down. And I think there's even still remnants of that percolating throughout the country, which is a problem. And now we have another mayor calling for change. Is anything going to happen? Who knows? Here she is.
Don't know what it's like to be a cop, but I know what it's like to be a mother.
The mayor calling these actions unjustifiable, calling for change from within.
That feels that at every turn, there's harm, there's hurt, and undervalue. I know what it's like. And I'm asking for everybody, all of us, to understand, to hear, to listen, to empathize, but most of all, to act differently.
Differently, something RPD interim chief and executive deputy chief say begins with internal review.
Yeah, all right, enough of that crap. I'm so sick of this internal review crap. So sick of it. She's the mayor. She's got some political power. How about the legislature take some action on this stuff? I'm so tired of the internal reviews. The police are going to investigate themselves. Let me give you a sneak preview of what they're going to find. They can make improvements. Wow. Okay. Congratulations, boys and girls. You can make improvements in your department. Okay. So you're going to implement those departments and you're just going to go back on about your business. In other words, the police are going to investigate themselves and find that they did nothing wrong. We have some room for improvement. We always have room for improvement. We're sorry that the tensions, bubbled up so much, and we're going to try better. And the mayor is going to go out there and give this impassioned speech or change and understanding and all of this stuff. And nobody's going to do a damn thing that's going to fix the justice system. I've got proposals for it. If anybody wants a proposal, they can go back and look at any of my videos from last summer. There's many proposals about different things that we can focus on that will ultimately improve the system, but nobody wants to take it. Nobody wants to do anything about it. Why? Because there's too much political baggage. The police unions have their fingers on all of the levers of power. The police have the city councils in the bag. Okay, I was going to use a different phrase, but they have them in the bag because the city councils need the police to patrol the cities, and the police have a monopoly on the use of force. They have the unions. And they have a lot of power. They can dictate the contracts between the city councils and the police unions. And so nothing ultimately gets changed. The politicians don't want to anger the police or the police unions. The police unions want to protect the cops, even the bad cops, even the cops who are responsible for the type of garbage that you saw. They will just allow them to continue and to exist because that's what unions do. They protect bad cops. That's just one man's opinion. So this story gets me so heated up. Thanks for bearing with me as we went through that. One of these stories that will kind of make your stomach churn. But let's move on into the super chats. As always, our first is from Sharon Quidney. Good to see you, Sharon. She says, have you heard anything about President Trump being barred from getting national security briefings? Don't all former presidents get those? I have not heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. I've seen a lot of stuff in the Twitter sphere from people saying that he should not get those anymore, but I haven't seen that has gone into effect. And I don't know if that would be a consequence of an impeachment conviction. I haven't heard that or read that anywhere. I just think that the only ultimate provision in there is that he wouldn't be able to run again. But I still think that he would be inclined to get all of those other briefings. Good to see you there, Sharon. We have another one from Liberty or Death. Says, I quoted Thomas Sowell in class, and now I'm a white supremacist. Someone should tell Dr. Sowell he's a racist. The left will always try to cancel you. Liberty or Death, I think, is in law school. Is that right? And Liberty or Death quoted Thomas Sowell, who is a brilliant economist, author. He's written, I don't know, about 100 books. I mean, one of the most brilliant thinkers of our time, I would say. And because Liberty or Death quoted him, he got labeled a white supremacist. But Thomas Sowell happens to be a black man. So apparently Thomas Sowell has some pretty strong opinions on race. He very well might be a white supremacist as well. We just don't know. We have Sharon Quidney says, okay, on the hate speech, it's like they're saying if you disagree with the party line, you're a criminal, just like in any totalitarian dictatorship. It does seem that way, right, Sharon? Because anything that is oppositional is now a component of disinformation, or it's dangerous, or it's extremist. And you can just see how it sort of levels up. Well, that's disinformation. And that disinformation is now dangerous. And now because that dangerous language might trigger some people and lead to an insurrection or political opposition. I mean, it's kind of interchangeable at this point in time. Any political opposition is being very loosely connected to insurrection. Because if you're saying anything against the government, that might trigger somebody to do something against the government, and that can ultimately lead to insurrection. So from disinformation all the way up to insurrection and then extremism, that's how they're going to be defining it. So just get used to that and buckle up. Beth Coddington in the house says, happy Monday, gang. Just watched the MUG Club this morning, the Mug Club. He says, I hope he wins. I have great confidence in his half-Asian lawyer, Bill. Honestly, Steven Crowder's show, I don't know how they have not been canceled. I mean, half Asian lawyer. Like, that is so politically incorrect. I can't even believe I just said that or said that earlier today on the show, but it is pretty funny. And it is funny that the half Asian lawyer is so having fun with it. So I would like to see more of that. I would like more levity about some of this stuff. It just feels so overly anal retentive to just be, so careful with language when you're having fun with it. Wolfgang Deo says, "Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the Rochester Christmas Eve fire, not the summer rioting stuff. Oh, well, hold the line with diamond hands," says Wolfgang Deo. Good to see you, Wolfgang. He's got another one as well. Says, "At least now hate speech is being inclusive." Yeah, I mean, if everything is hate speech, is anything hate speech? I mean, basically, you can make the argument for anything, right? If you have an opinion about anything and somebody disagrees with you and their opinion is connected to anything in their life that is, I don't know, race or status or gender or sexuality or any of those things, is your opinion about something that is tangentially related, is that hate speech? You might be getting close. We have another one from Turd Ferguson. Says, "Zuck is king of the lizard people. Speaking is hard." Yeah, Turd, I just don't know what that's all about. It's like, I am, my name's Rob, right? And so people here at the office will sometimes call me or used to call me. I've worked on this. I've upgraded my software, but they've called me, Robot Rob, or like I'm like robotic, because I just sort of follow a routine like clockwork. And, I upgraded my firmware and now I have a bit of a personality at the office. It took me some years to work on that. But the Zuck is somebody who has just been monotonous and robotic for like the last decade. Every time I see him speak, I'm like, what is he? Do you mean that? Because it doesn't look like you mean that. Looks like you're reading from something or you're rehearsing something. But that just might be me. Good to see you, Turd. We have another one from Beth. Says, "I feel so much better about the big tech censorship since Brian Stelter explained, poetically I might add, that rather than losing freedom of speech, we lose freedom of reach." Okay, so that's an interesting distinction there. I would say, Brian Stelter trying his hand at the rhymes, freedom of speech, freedom of reach. Okay, I like it. Thanks for that, Beth. You watch Brian Stelter, Beth? That would be surprising to me. Wolfgang Deo says, "We need to establish speech as having the same value as a person. Yes, we can treat its objects as in an algorithm, but in society, we must change." Wolfgang Deo. That's pretty good. That's a nice statement there, Wolfgang. Thank you for that. Conspiracy theories are not dangerous. What happened to HARP and the other stuff? Only dangerous stuff is by those suppressing it. That is violence. I agree, Wolfgang. I agree. I think that conspiracy theories are fun. I think that they're sort of like mental gymnastics. I think that people, sometimes should explore some different lines of thinking. You want to get creative in your head. If you just are, think about it as when you were a kid. You could, 8 years old, you could imagine anything. Anything was possible. But the older and older you get as an adult, the more the world just seems unchangeable and everything is what it is. And I don't think that's true. And it's kind of, you lose a little bit of flavor in life if you just let your imagination wither away. So conspiracy theories are fun for that way. And I don't think that they're too dangerous at all. Wolfgang Deo says, "The blue shield idea is antithetical, leads to binary thinking. The issue is the situation that occurred to conservatives. How do we stop these? The issue is the situation that occurred to conservatives. How do we stop these? How do we stop those situations?" Well, number one, I mean, I don't think that the culture in law enforcement is suitable for a civilian patrol, right? These are not military people. These are civilians. These are, civilian police. They're not out there or they shouldn't be out there to, crack heads and break things and kill people. They should be out there to resolve situations rather than make arrests. And I think that largely our law enforcement and police departments have gotten too focused on a punishment. And I talk about this, all the time. This is sort of a foundational issue. Do we want a justice system that is punitive or rehabilitative, right? And there's two fundamental differences in thought. In one version, American justice right now is heavily punitive. The goal is to punish people. We want to punish. That's why we have mandatory sentencing. You've got all of these provisions that make it really hard to commit a crime in this country. You lose everything. You can go to prison. You lose your right to vote when you get out. You're on parole when you get out. Community supervision. all sorts of, follow-up requirements and probation for years. It just goes on and on and on. Then you have a criminal record and you're punished indefinitely for that, right? Every time you apply for a job, you got to mark a box. Every time you want to go find a place to live or rent an apartment, got to mark a box, convicted of a felony. And so the punishment just attaches to people for the rest of their lives. I think a better way is to rehabilitate people. It's to say, all right, maybe we cannot punish the pain out of people. Maybe people have other problems, drug problems, alcohol problems, traumatic problems. Maybe they were abused as a kid. Maybe there's a different way where we can help people get through the system, pay a little bit of retribution for whatever they did, make society whole, do some community service, mentor somebody, go volunteer at a food shelter or something like that, and then provide them with some tools so that by the time they come out of the system, they are less likely to commit another offense. They're a better person as a result. They've paid their debt to society and they've improved. So that when they come back into society, they're not a worse person and society is actually benefited. Remember, when they come out the other system, when they come out the way that it is currently, they're in a worse position. They've gone in, they've paid their debt, they've paid their dues, and they come out worse. And who has to deal with that? You and I do. Society does. Everybody does. It's not good. So rather than us continuing to shoot ourselves in the foot, maybe there's a better way we can think through justice that doesn't involve pepper spraying a 9-year-old girl and allows us to help treat people or help resolve situations in a way that is more rehabilitative rather than punitive. Good question, Wolfgang. Jonathan says, this is a good example of needing social workers to be right seat with the cops sometimes. Yeah, and I agree with that, Jonathan. I think it's a perfect example. This is a situation where that would have been absolutely appropriate. 9-year-old girl, uncooperative. Okay, call in the social worker unit. Let them deal with her. Rather than, a couple of meathead cops who don't know how to deal with a 9-year-old and who just resort to handcuffs in the snow, in the back of the car, with pepper spray. We're following procedure. Right? And they're going to do it with a 9-year-old girl. Not good. Concussed Gamer says the people who supported Twitter because it's a private company should also support Robinhood since it's a private company. Yeah, we're seeing some major cognitive dissonance going on here. Major cognitive dissonance. And I think we're also ripe for revisiting what that means. What does a private company mean when it is something that is, basically the only platform that is replacing the public square, right? You can go out in the square in a public park and you've got certain free speech protections because you're on public ground. But what if you can't go into the park anymore? What if you're locked down in your city and the only public area to communicate is housed in one of these, mega monopolies like a Twitter or a Facebook? And they're acting like publishers rather than platforms. Maybe we deserve a second look at that. Maybe there should be a digital bill of rights to protect some of those freedoms. Wolfgang Deo also says, sheesh, it is insane that people will assert physical control and then ask, quote, how can I help without realizing the irony of reality? Let go. How can I help? Thank you, Wolfgang. We have another one. Wiping one's eyes with pepper sprays only makes it worse. While we think it is such a simple gesture, such simple gestures are good to give. Are good to not give. It's complex. So yeah, the pepper spray, I have never been pepper sprayed in the eyes. I've been tasered before voluntarily. Just wanted to see what it felt like. It's not good. But pepper spray in the eyes, I have not done that. But, I would imagine it's painful and probably very concerning if you're 9 years old. One Drop says, I blame the parents, not the cops. Learn to respect authority. Well, that's one opinion there. One Drop. We have Pinky 2 says, the little girl just had trauma and she lives in trauma regularly. You can tell everyone directly involved did a poor job. Community service with children. I think that's fair, Pinky. And that's why, I was a little hard on the cops, but then I kind of backed that off a little bit. They're in an impossible situation too. They've got a job. They've got their supervisors barking down their necks. They've got protocols to follow. They've been living in a culture where this type of stuff is okay. It's actually favored, right? It's cherished. It's celebrated. And they think that they're in this little conclave where they're always under assault. Everything they do is, is putting their lives on the line and at risk. And they do, right? They do it at times do that. This was not one of those situations. And so I think that the police response should be proportional to the context in which they are operating. But I would agree with you. Just an all-around bad situation. Just very, very concerning, very troubling. And it's unfortunate. My goal, my vision would be to be useful and to discuss how we can help, create a separate tract for people who are in these situations that don't need 9 police cars with guns and, an eye to make arrests. Maybe this little girl could have been treated better. Cheryl Myers says the girl would be scarred from the horrendous dysfunctional family she's being raised in. Not all 9-year-olds are sweet and loving. Some worse than 16-year-olds. Yeah, I think that girl is in trouble. No question about it, from everybody. Not an ideal home to be raised in. Not an ideal situation. Just got pepper sprayed by the cops. It's not good. I'd like to see how we can address that. Rachel Fromm in the house says, I wonder if there is more going on with the 9-year-old girl, possible emotional disability, which would warrant a much different approach to the situation. Really disgusting to see this happen to a child. To a child. Yeah, and I agree totally with that, Rachel. It is probably accurate. I think that there's probably a lot of truth to that. There was some indication that I saw in the article that we read here that she wanted to kill her mom. Don't know what that means. And then we also saw that she was suicidal, right? I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, or how they gleaned that information. Where did that information come from? I don't know. I didn't see it in the video. I watched the full video. We clipped through about, I don't know, maybe a third of it today, but I watched the full thing. I didn't see anything about that. I didn't hear her say, I want to kill myself or I want to kill my mom or any of that. And so we sort of picked it up right from when the cop went and approached her. And then, the rest of the story is history. She got sort of, arrested, handcuffs, back of the car, pepper spray. So yes, I agree with you completely. There are, and this doesn't just extend to 9-year-olds. There are people out there that have all sorts of mental disabilities, or they're in a drug-induced psychosis or something along those lines. And the question is, how do we identify those people and then deploy an appropriate response? And I think if the police departments are going to be effective in this new era, they're going to have to adapt. They have to figure out a better response to these types of situations. And I'm very open to being part of that solution. I want to see them improved. I want to see less people go through this. I want to see less people killed. I want to see less people arrested for needless offenses. And maybe the whole system can work itself into a better situation. Thanks, Rachel. Good to see you. And thanks for that very nice super chat. Much appreciated. Chairman of the board in the House says the Facebook video alone is not a big deal, but shows Facebook has an agenda that aligns with Biden. Couple that with covert election help, and now it's a legit problem. That's a good point, Chairman, and I sort of glossed over that. The video, the crux of the video itself was very bland. It was very benign, in my opinion. I didn't see anything in there that I was like, oh, that stands out. All mostly kind of vanilla, no sprinkles, no chocolate chips on there. It was all kind of standard, Fortune 500 CEO business techno speak, kind of, hey, we care about these issues. And you care, Zuckerberg, you care about these? So do I. You want to do that? So do I. I want to help the new administration. Great. Kumbaya. Everything's fun. And so it's just I think a generic transitional speech addressing this thing coming in, and he's got to go out there and probably just read it right from a script and deliver that to his employees. But your point is accurate. If Facebook is out there modifying the algorithms, if they're showing Trump ads less than Biden ads, or if they're showing Biden posts more than Trump posts, or they're only notifying certain people to go vote, right? There was some allegations about that with Google, that Google apparently, this is, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I've seen indications of this. This might be in Crowder's lawsuit or in other lawsuits. It's the idea that they were showing certain people the reminder to go vote, register to vote, go vote. Did you go vote? And then other people just wouldn't get that because they didn't want them to vote, right? And you could easily configure an algorithm that would do that. You could just say, okay, these people go to, Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, and they go to Breitbart. And so they're just not going to get that reminder. Even on Facebook, I think you can tell them what your political ideology is. Those people don't get reminders, right? If any of that was going on, and I'm just totally speculating at this point, that would be extremely damning. And we just don't know because this is all closed door stuff. I would guess that Steven Crowder is probably trying to open those doors up a little bit, but I'm not holding my breath on it. Wolfgang Dale with another one says, who benefits from unions preventing change of the people with a monopoly on force? Who benefits from union preventing change? Well, the unions do. Yeah, I mean, the unions do. They're they want to increase their membership. They want to secure more funding, more raises for everybody. I mean, they're looking out for the unions. And I've told this story before, but in Arizona, the police union here, some time ago, had a contract with the City of Phoenix Police Department where after 5 years, evidence of officer misconduct is flushed down the toilet. It's just gone. After 5 years, gone. So all you got to do is just make it 5 years, and that old incident where you pepper sprayed a 9-year-old is going to go away. It's because that's what the unions negotiated. Takahara Seiji says, who is subverting the election? Did you see that one of the election for a lawmaker got overturned and a Republican ended up getting a particular seat over a Democrat? Seiji, I did not see that one. I did not see that. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. There is still some election stuff going on. I think I saw a situation. I can't even recall. Sorry, Seiji, I don't know which one you're talking about, but you have another question, so let's get to that. We need to make the white police officer see things through the eyes of a black child arrested. Hello, stop being racist, number one. And how does a person's color mean they haven't been programmed to be receptive? How about the pundit realize that neither the popo nor the arrestee are thinking about race? Yeah, Seiji, I talk about this a lot on this channel. I say that, I think that there's clearly a racial component to all of this stuff, right? I think without a question, different demographics view people differently. I think men and women view police differently. I would imagine, age is a factor. I think there's probably a multiple variables that are going to go into how people interact with anybody. And that just is just life in general. And so what my inclination has been is to rather than make this a white versus a black thing, this is a law enforcement versus an everybody else thing. I think that is more accurate. And I'm saying that candidly. We have seen many, many instances, both personally in my professional life as a criminal lawyer and publicly in some of the stories that I see and monitor. I don't cover them all because most of them just kind of fly under the radar. There's not that much information about them. It's only when it fits a particular narrative that it becomes a big story, and then there's enough to talk about because people have gotten the reports, they've done enough analysis, the video footage is released. But I can tell you from my personal experience, I've seen all sorts of black cops on black arrestees violence. And multiple demographics, blacks on whites and Hispanics on whites and Asians. I mean, we have it all. Okay, we can draw those lines if we want, but I don't think it's useful. I think it is to further a political agenda, and I think the bigger problem is the culture of law enforcement versus everybody else. It's this sort of circle the wagons idea. It's the blue shield. It's the blue code of silence. It's we're on the inside. We are the last line of defense. Everybody else is a potential threat. And that might work if you're in the military and you're, floating around Fallujah. But this is not Fallujah. We live in America, and this was taking place in Rochester. It's a law enforcement problem, and I think that if we can correctly identify what the problem is, then we can focus on some solutions. We say, another one from Chris Wiseman says, stop, you're not in trouble. If that's the case, there's no probable cause to detain her, or am I missing something? Yeah, did he say that? Stop, you're not in trouble? Yeah, he probably did, right? Just to talk with her. It's a good point. It's a good point there, Chris. They'll probably use some other justification for detaining her. Probably like, we needed to identify her. We needed to make sure that she wasn't having a mental health problem or a mental health emergency. There's a lot of justifications for that. I think that there would be enough there to justify that, but I'm not sure that there's enough there to justify the pepper spray. I think that's ultimately, if you were to break this down procedurally and do a really detailed analysis, like if you're going to file a lawsuit on this thing, I think that most of what they did, you could justify. And if you wanted to sue them for putting her in handcuffs or for putting her in the back of the car, I think that you probably find that most people at that point in time would say, all right, look, not ideal, not good. There's a better way we could do this. We could have brought a community, social worker in here. We could have had a sort of a de-escalation team show up, and that would have been more effective. We didn't do that, but she was getting violent. We had no other choice. We had to put her in handcuffs and put her in the back of the car. You may totally disagree with that, but I think that they would be justified and protected under qualified immunity for doing that. Now, after that fact, after she's in the car already in handcuffs, surrounded by 9 cops, and an officer is giving her multiple warnings, I'm going to pepper spray you just because her feet are hanging outside of the car, I think that is beyond the pale. I don't think there's any justification for that at all. Apparently it's in their protocol somewhere. So some lawyer somewhere has thought this through, but I'm not so sure that a jury would agree or a judge would agree that that pepper spraying a 9-year-old girl was justified. I don't think that would be kosher. We have One Drop says, with a very nice super chat, says, I hear you. However, we do live in a police state. Troops in DC. You won't be able to change the Dem policies in a Dem-controlled and run city. It was clear the 9-year-old thought her whiteness and privilege would protect her. Yeah. All that white privilege was very useful for that 9-year-old. Yeah, I mean, we kind of do live in a police state in many senses, right? We are very accustomed to overly criminalizing virtually everything. Okay, you can be charged with a crime for almost anything you can think of in this country. And I make this joke all the time. I'm a criminal defense attorney, so some people really get aggressive with me. They say, well, how can you represent those people? How can you how about you just don't drink and drive? How about you don't do this? And how about you don't do that? And you'll just never need an attorney. Those people deserve what they get because they broke the law. And the next question is, well, have you ever broken the law? And some people, believe it or not, just go, no, never. I've never done that. I've never drank and drive, never done anything like that. And you just say, okay, well, go to Title 28, which is our traffic code here in Arizona, and you'll see there's like 2,000 line items on there. Okay, it's a lot. There's a lot in there. And you can basically break the law for almost anything. And so we're always under the gun of a possibility of being arrested. You can get arrested for posting memes now, 5 years later. So, I mean, everything is criminal. And you just see it across the board. So the idea that we live in this, this country where you have all of these freedoms and all these protections and all of the police are just nice, good people who just want to show up and help, I think is a nice fiction, but it's a fiction. They want you to think that. But that's just not the case. I can't tell you how many people have come into our office and said, I called the police because I thought that they were going to come help. We're in a situation, and they showed up and they arrested him, and they wrecked our house. They searched everywhere. They cut open the pillows, and they just demolished everything. And they say, I will never call the police again, never ever. And for good reason. I don't blame them, because the police, is it really about serving and protecting, or are there some other ulterior motives there? And I do believe there are good cops. I've had experiences with them, many of them. But the institution could use some serious reform. Thanks, One Drop. I appreciate you. Cattle Caregiver says, so at Faith Joy, so what would have been wrong with letting her see her dad? As a child who grew up in an abusive family, it is so sad. This is where our families in America are. When the family unit breaks down, our society breaks down. Yeah, Cattle Caregiver, I think you're exactly on the right mark here. What else could have happened? Did they know where the father was? Did they know where the mother was? There were 9 cops there. So presumably somebody had eyes on him. There's about 1 million different ways the situation could have been handled. Rather than throwing her in a cop car, where the next logical step for a 9-year-old is they are taking you away. That's why you're going into a car. And you're not going into a nice little van. You're going into a car that has jail material on the windows. You've got fencing and you've got, gates. It looks scary as hell. You're in a plastic thing. It's horrendous. And they're just throwing a 9-year-old girl in there. And they're wondering why she's freaking out. I'm not wondering, right? I've seen many grown adults freak out when that happens. Rightfully so. It's a scary thing. You're being detained and thrown in the back of a car. She's 9. Could have brought her into a house, could have sat her down, could have had a conversation with her, could have gotten mom and dad, could have explained the whole situation. But that takes time. They don't like that. They gave her 3 minutes. She was sitting in the car for about 3 minutes, and they said, all right, enough already. Hit her with the pepper spray. I hope they feel good about themselves. I know I sure as hell wouldn't. I would be very, very disgusted with that type of behavior. Sarah Elizabeth says, regarding Crowder, besides government intervention, can big tech be held liable for anything if the lawsuit doesn't pan out? So, Sarah, I don't think so. I mean, I think that they're basically immune at this point in time. And the reason I say that is because they have, many people have made attempts, right? They've been hauled in front of Congress multiple times, and the Congress people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They ask them questions that they don't even know what they're talking about. And these big tech people just talk their way right out of it. And Congress isn't going to change anything, in my opinion. And it's also, I think, pretty clear that the big tech companies know how powerful they are. And the Congress people don't want to upset the apple cart. They know that they need them in order to win their next election. And so they're extremely powerful, even over our own government regulators. So these various lawsuits, I don't think that they're going to go anywhere. I mean, that's just my opinion. I don't think that the courts are going to entertain them. I think what we're going to see here is the courts are going to defer to the terms of service. They're going to, the user agreements. They're going to sort of toe the same line that we saw in the Amazon versus Parler lawsuit, where they said, no, It's a private company. They can do what they want. You breach their terms. They have a right to protect their product. And by removing your stream, Steven Crowder, they're protecting their product. And if you don't like it, you don't have to use them. And then Facebook is just going to refer over to its user agreements and say, we don't owe you anything. It's kind of the end of the lawsuit. So I think the next best thing that happens is, look, if you want to pull out the extreme measures, we have a convention of the states and we address this thing head on. That's a very, very tall order because that would bypass Congress. The other way to do it, build alternative platforms, which is already underway. And I think that's the best utility there. Sarah, you're over on locals, it looks like. Thank you very much for being there. But that's what where this is, I think, is going to go. You're going to have your Gabs, you're going to have your Rumbles, you're going to have your Epic, I think, does web servers. You're going to have locals, which is where we're sort of setting up shop. And eventually, that's just how the nature of the business is going to be. I don't think that there's really any other practical way to sort of shake that monopoly at this point in time, unless there's a big clamoring for it. But we're sort of there right now. You would imagine that most of the country is looking at the situation and going, this is troublesome. Entire companies are being deplatformed off of the internet. That's a problem. And if we can't even muster up enough political courage, political willpower to demand some change in Congress, now I'm not sure that it's ever going to happen. Donald Trump got deplatformed. Apparently he's got 74 million people who are just kind of like, all right, okay, well, all right, he's not on Twitter anymore. Okay. Guess we're just that's it. All right, we'll just move on with that, I guess. So we'll see where this goes. I think the dust is still way up in the air. We'll see where it settles out. The Wandering Mariner says soldiers are expected to be police and police are expected to be social workers. We have many issues to fix. Just my 2 cents. Yeah, that's a very excellent point, right? We're sort of putting people in a position to go do something, but we can't tell them to do that. Okay, soldiers should be out there killing people and breaking things. Like it's called war for that reason. Now, ideally, we don't have war. Ideally, we don't have soldiers that have to go do that. That I'm not pro-war in any sense of the idea because of that, right? I don't know why we are involved in all of these world issues all over the planet for things that we can have, I think, serious debates about. But in this case, there was a lot of critique about soldiers going overseas and then told that they can't fight. Well, then what the hell are they doing over there? Same with the police. Okay, if the police are here, they should be policing. Maybe we need some other solution for dealing with these non-police necessary situations. It's a good point, the Wandering Mariner. I appreciate that. Ooh, we got a long one over here from Brian Hack. Said, those bad popo are also in shock, not bad. Just like the Blue Shield stuff, we also need to avoid expanding bad actions to everyone that does not step in. Ever hear of watching a train wreck? Yeah, avoid expanding bad actions. Yes, I want to have the police step in, but there's no foundation in these situations to actually pin their complacency as bad. It's just a natural reaction to a train wreck. Yeah, and that's kind of why I walked that back, Brian. I mean, I said that they were bad, but, you're right. I really don't know. And I walked that back because I agree. They're kind of just following their orders. There is no foundation in these situations to actually pin their complacency as bad. It's just a natural reaction to a train wreck. And both blue shields and bad popo stereotypes prevent us from building a foundation that improves the future. We just pour more salt into the wounds. I agree with you. The bad popo likely don't learn their lesson because it was horrendous and thus they wish to not think about it. We need to stop changing things. We need to allow ourselves to reflect on the bad things. We need a proper avenue for lamenting and repenting. Lamenting and repenting, I like that, on our own individual terms, not the terms of some social justice, quote, no justice, no peace, self-righteous narcissist. It's an excellent point there, Brian. And I actually identify a lot with that. The bad popo thing is something that I've sort of toyed around with. I've kind of brought it back and then let it go and brought it back. And it's just kind of a fun way to identify what we're talking about. But at a more foundational level, I agree with you. And I think that a lot of these officers are good people. I think basically everybody is a good person, and we just have our own traumas and our own problems that we're dealing with that lead to some bad behavior. And in this situation, I think it's a much bigger cultural problem that in the police department, this is the culture. Yeah, it's to just harden up, not look at this stuff so much, because if you do, you're probably not going to make it, right? If you're a police officer, and as that police union rep said, they probably had 5 other calls that day. And so at some level, if you stop and empathize and think about your response to the stimulus that you see, to these different interactions, you're not going to cut it. You're going to go, what are we doing here? And they don't want that. They want you to just say, look, this is the job. This is part of the deal. We have to get comfortable with this stuff, or at least block it out, right? Not bring it up. And that's why you saw 6 different cops standing there as they pepper sprayed a 9-year-old girl. And so you're right. It's not exactly fair of me to just automatically call them bad police. I don't know them, right? And I don't know what the protocols are, but we covered 20 minutes of that video. And you would like to think that if you were standing there, you would have said, "Hey, are you whacked out of your mind, lady? What are you doing?" But you don't know. And this is what, there's all these different experiments about, what was the one out of Stanford where they were shocking the hell out of people, the Milford experiments or something like that, where they were shocking people and they had an actor on the other side and they just kept turning the volume up on the electrodes, and the person started screaming higher and higher, and the person just kept turning it up like good people. Like middle-aged housewives just going, "Oh yeah, a level 10? Oh, looks like he's about to die, but 11? You want me to turn it to 11? No problem. Turn it right up to 11, right? Even though it wasn't actually shocking the person, they thought they were. And so you don't know what the human mind is capable of. But my point in discussing this, and why I want to bring these stories to attention, is to discuss solutions. How can we fix this? Because this is not okay. Everybody's upset about this. The police are upset about it. They're trying to justify their behaviors. Anybody who's anti-police is very upset about this, and they're trying to defund the police completely. And I don't think that either particular side is on the mark. And I appreciate your comment there, Brian, because it's accurate, right? We all want to be a little bit more, I think, understanding, because if we just put labels on people and throw them into different buckets, that's not particularly useful. We need to label things, accurately, or at least discuss, what is behind the label, what is causing this to be so prevalent in our society. Then we can discuss some real solutions. But I've just been so frustrated with this because I haven't seen any real solutions proposed. Even after all the BLM stuff and all the political hate that's been made about this, it's still just something that's not being addressed. We saw the mayor out there from Rochester talking a lot about change. Is anything going to happen? No, I don't think so. Wolfgang Deo says, "Our military in Iraq have learned to be better police than the police in our own blue-run towns." Yeah, they have all sorts of very strict rules of engagement. All right, we got another one from Turd Ferguson. I'm laughing already. He says, "You are truly lucky in love if only you can find someone to love you the way Brian Stelter loves Brian Stelter." Brian Stelter loves Brian Stelter. He loves it. And you can see when he's in there and he's doing one of these things and going down there, he's looking at the camera, and then he kind of looks over here. You can kind of see he's looking at himself. He's going, "You're looking good there, Brian. Looking good. Keep it up. Keep going after those conservatives." And he's looking at the camera. Then you can see his eyes move just a little bit. Boom. He's looking at himself. He loves how he looks. I look at myself too. Look at that. It's good. You want to frame yourself. But Brian Stelter definitely loves Brian Stelter. We have Maurice Nelson says, great work. Thanks, Maurice. I appreciate you chiming in there with a nice super chat. We got another long one over here from Croc1 Alpha. Says, "At Faith Joy, in Australia, we have a police liaison officers who are recruited from minority communities, such as the Aboriginal community, Sudanese community, who are essentially civilians in police-esque attire who can communicate with their community on behalf of the police and quite often are called to assist or can be approached without the fear of the popo. Seeing them at community events, they act as that go-between when the police aren't getting anywhere." Yeah, in Australia. Our mates down under. Maybe we should pick up some of those thoughts. Maybe we can implement some of those ideas, which I think are great ideas, right? And I've always said, I think local is better. The more, the bigger entities get, the bigger police departments get. Like right now, our Phoenix Police is, I think it's like the fifth biggest in the country. It's massive. Like $1 billion budgets and things. Huge. And the more bureaucracy you have, the less accountability you have. And so I really like this idea from Croc1 Alpha, who's saying, yeah, just pull them from the communities in which they're living. And you just create these little, precincts where you have some community policing, some people looking after themselves who are trained for this. And maybe we take some of those billions of dollars from the police departments, funnel them to some other organizations. I would be very inclined to support that. Captain Jim says, "Did the cops know at the time that she's 9? Good question, Captain Jim. I don't know. Captain Jim, look at that, in an airplane. It's pretty impressive. It's actually a pilot, Captain Jim. So, I don't know. You could probably look at her. She looked a little bit bigger, right? She looked kind of bigger for a 9-year-old, but probably close-ish. You could probably ballpark it like, I don't know, 8 to 12, maybe. I mean, how old could she be? 12, 14? Maybe. It's still pretty young. I still don't think you should be pepper spraying a 14-year-old. But we got another one from Beth. Beth, I have far more sympathy towards the Chicago Teachers Union strike after their moving interpretive dance. Perhaps if Biden and Harris had done one, I would have voted for them. So Beth is on the interpretive dance train. So if you want to win favor from Beth, and I certainly do, then it sounds like the right recipe is interpretive dance. However, this channel, Beth, as much as I do love you, will never be interpretive dance channel. All right. Sorry to break your heart on that. Wolfgang Deo says, vote, vote, vote. For like 4 months, I got this message thrown at me. Leave me alone. I know when the election is. Go away. Trespass. Yeah, there was a lot of that. Facebook and all of the others were really needling people. Did you vote? Did you vote? Did you vote? And I'm wondering if everybody got the same message. Who knows? Helen Alera says, in my opinion, police union have written contracts which is very difficult to fire or discipline officers for misconduct. Helen, it's my opinion too. I've been following that for a lot of time. The police unions, I think, are just horrendous across the board. We have one of the worst in Arizona. It's called PLEA, Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, PLEA. Do you know what a plea is? It's when you plead guilty, when you go in and plead guilty. So it's like they're setting, in the name of their organization is a reference to, by coincidence, right? Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. It's pretty accurate, but it's also a plea. So it's like, we're going to arrest you and you're going to go take a plea deal. And then they just get on Facebook and they just rant about Lord knows what. It's like, you know, some hysterical person is just firing off on their social media profiles. I've had a lot of issues with them, and I think that is probably the same problem across the board across this country. We have chairman of the board says, I propose that we put the impeachment party on record as being officially against any government official pepper spraying 9-year-old girls. That's a good policy prescription. I think, Chairman, I think we could agree on that. You know, I would even extend it a little bit further. I would say anything, let's say under 12. Maybe that'll split the middle. Maybe some people are okay pepper spraying teenagers, 13 and up. You know, they're teenagers now. Just pepper spray the hell out of them. But anybody who's 12 and under, we have a zero pepper spray policy in the new impeachment party. By the way, chairman of the board is the secretary. It's pretty great. Chairman, if you want to start drafting that up, we'll be able to take that to committee for review. We have another one from AL. We need a congressperson to introduce articles of impeachment against former Democrat presidents before T's trial so they can admit how ridiculous it is. Yeah. You know, we should just go back and just impeach. I mean, we can just impeach all the former presidents, right? Barack Obama's on that list. George Bush is on that list. Even George Washington's on the list. We can impeach them all because apparently that's how it works now. You don't even have to be in office to be convicted and imposed a penalty that removes you from office. So the sentence, if Donald Trump is convicted, is he's removed from office, but he's not in office anymore. So what's the trial for? Oh, it's to prevent him from running again? Even though the word is and? It's removal and preventing from running again? All right. Yeah. AL, impeach everybody. We had Seiji Takahara over here says, that child is actually likely to be in a better situation thanks to that, as your Declaration of Independence says. Seiji's over from Japan, so he's referring to our declaration. It says something about transient evils are sufferable, whereas long-held abuses are abolished. With everything being discussed, even if that child may have been brought to the brink of horror, the child will likely do a lot better than the adults involved. Don't want to see this happen, of course. However, I think we are assuming too much lasting harm that does not necessarily exist. Thanks, Freud, and hashtag #MeToo. Yeah, thanks, Seiji. Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to believe that little girl will never forget this situation. You know, I think that this is something that leaves a mark forever, especially if you're 9. And, you know, it's troublesome. I hope that family finds peace. I hope that they figure out their issues, whatever they are. You know, certainly her parents fighting and a father putting a mother in a headlock and she's bleeding enough that it's on his shirt and she thinks he got stabbed. Horrific situation, right? That's awful. The police showing up and then pepper spraying her doesn't help. So maybe there's a better way we can deal with all of that. We have another one from Wolfgang Deo says, Dem-controlled executive and legislative, yes, but we need to start giving ideas of where to sue and just at least unleash a hailstorm of lawsuits to get to the Supreme Court. Yeah, I think you're talking about some of the sort of Section 230 lawsuits or the Crowder lawsuits. I'm just not sure that they're going to make it past the hurdles that they need to. Now, Stephen has said, we'll see where this goes. I actually sort of believe, Stephen, there's been a lot of other, conservative commentators out there who say that they're filing lawsuits all the time, right? We're filing lawsuits and they go nowhere. They raise money, they take that money, they throw it in their bank account. There are no lawsuits. I'm going to guess that Stephen is serious, right? And their lawsuit is actually going to get filed. And if it is denied, then maybe he's got the fortitude and the funding to continue, and the lawyer who apparently is part of the show and on staff, to just dedicate all of their time to moving that lawsuit forward, which is why I sort of wanted to pause and at least cover it and just say, okay, well, they've got sort of the political backbone, the willpower to drive this bus through. And if they get denied, if this lawsuit gets dismissed on whatever grounds, probably going to be a standing issue or they might hear it on the merits. We'll see. I don't know where it's going to go, but they have the ability and the funding to appeal, try different courts, modify their arguments. And so if they're throwing their hat into the legal fight, I'll be very curious to see where it goes. Laura Wren says, why wouldn't they at least try and get her dad? It would have calmed her down. As a minor, she has a right to have her parent present. It's a great question, Laura. I don't know. They had that whole situation, the videos there were about 20 minutes. Maybe they didn't know where he was. The police will typically do this. They separate everybody. That's kind of one of the first things they do. When they show up to a domestic situation, everybody gets separated. And, unless they are going to sort of reintegrate everybody, somebody's typically getting arrested. Somebody's going to jail. So they make sure that you're separate so you don't have the time to corroborate your stories with one another. I agree, though. Dad could have probably just calmed the whole situation down. That's all she was asking for. Maybe they couldn't find him. TZ1052 says, do we accept a restaurant to not seat people based on race? I see the parallel with these tech companies banning speech they don't like. Yeah, TZ, and this is sort of one of those, spicy arguments that you can make. Free speech is pretty important. And it feels like maybe they're trying to segregate one demographic from their platforms. A little controversial there. Blue-Eyed Hillbilly says, at Faith Joy, I'm not sure how to send super chats. I spent a lot of money and no message sent. Technotard. Well, Blue-Eyed Hillbilly, it can be a little bit tricky out there. She says, LOL. But what I'm trying to find out is, who do I contact for the class action suit towards Robinhood? They've canceled, banned, and limited my investing, and I joined Tuesday night last week. So Blue-Eyed Hillbilly, I would hang tight on that. There's going to be a lot of those. And they are available. So we covered the Robinhood lawsuit. I think that was Friday. Yeah, I think it was Friday. So what I would just do is just Google Robinhood class action. You're probably going to find other lawyers out there who will just say, come into our class, come join us. And that's where I would start. And maybe reach out to a lawyer who's already got a lawsuit filed. We have Brian Hack says, Rob, I thought you said you had a stack of, quote, real solutions. Thumb sticking out emoji. What we need is a, quote, real process where we continuously hammer out all these caveats that are hampering the implementation of, quote, real solutions. I think the best love is not how much Brian Stelter loves Brian Stelter, but how much Brian Hack loves Pokemon. Narcissistic love is really just empty, and thus there is nothing you can do except keep doing it since the hole is never filled. Yeah, that's another good point there, Brian. I think process is also important. Some of the solutions that I went through are in other videos that I've done, so I'm not going to rehash those out. But we talked about a lot of them. Civilian oversight boards. We've talked about ending qualified immunity, a real Brady list system that works. There's a number of different options that we could do. I'm just not going to get into them all here. But I think your point is very well taken. So we have solutions, but we also need a process that we follow to continually revise the solution, see how they're working, measure them in order to determine how effective they ultimately are. Seji says, really fun seeing how there is an actual conversation going on, yet Rob is stuck in a room talking to himself in front of a camera. Well, Seji, I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to you, my friend. I'm talking to all of you out there with these great super chats. And so even though technically, if this wasn't connected to anything, yeah, that'd be a little bit weird. Like if I was just sitting there talking to myself. Actually, though, I do that all the time anyways, even if the camera's not on. So that's just how it goes with me, I guess. Wolfgang Deo says, Can people call me a bad popo? I want to have that kind of publicity and funding coming in to keep me doing what I am already doing. Ben Carson. Wolfgang, I don't know what you want. Wolfgang, you are a very bad popo. Hope you feel better about that. Peter S. says, training for police is terrible and you want more and you want to take funding away. They need more training. Someone untrained is more likely to escalate. So that's a good question there, Peter. I would say that the training for police is pretty basic. I actually just made a video about that. I think I covered that for DREs, drug recognition experts. That's on our separate channel, on our Arizona channel. Talked about that. It's not a lot of training, right? And it's like 9 days, I think, of training is all, and then they're good to go. So it really isn't that much. Now, I'm not sure more funding is the solution. I think that maybe they have enough funding. Maybe we need to talk about some other things rather than just throwing more money at the problems, because that is always the answer, and that is rarely the solution. We see that all over the place. More money, more money, more money. Everybody wants more money. Okay, but then you just have a better funded police force. What about qualified immunity? What about a Brady list? What about, a civilian oversight board or de-escalation teams or any of these other fundamental changes? I'm okay talking about more funding, provided we get some other substantive changes, not just more money for the same system, because the foundation, in my opinion, is broken. So it's like throwing good money after bad, in my opinion. It's like trying to fix a house that's falling apart. Well, maybe it's time to knock that house down a little bit or shore up the foundation of that house. Then we can talk about fixing the roof. Good question. Another one from AL. This is our last one of the day. AL says, protecting terrible officers and awful employees makes me dislike unions, even though they're useful for negotiations between labor force and employers. Yeah, AL, I think I like sort of the idea of not really. I really have nothing positive to say much about unions. I like the idea that people feel like they have, better bargaining power and like they're getting some benefits out of that. I certainly am not a fan of overly harsh work environments. I think unions were sort of born out of the era where they were sending, children into coal mines and stuff, or people were, killing themselves on the railroads, and they needed to improve working conditions. You can make maybe the same argument that that's happening today in a different fashion. It's happening, potentially in Amazon. I don't know. I've heard a lot of, bad things about that, but I don't know. They seem to keep people employed. And the last I heard, they were offering people like $20 an hour or something like that, so pretty decent money. And so if people want to engage in that transaction and it's voluntary and it's hard work, they got to package up a bunch of packages within a certain period of time, then that's great. And if they don't want to do that, then they go work elsewhere. And so I'm not sure that unions, I think they're sort of vestigial. They're from a bygone era, and I'm not sure how useful they are now, because what I see from unions is, they don't want to go back to school, right? They don't want to get back into the classrooms. I also see the police doing awful things with their unions, and a lot of misconduct is sort of washed away under the protection of the union. So I just think that it has gotten a little bit far off track, and maybe there's a better way we can do both things. Provide more accountability, more transparency, while also making sure that people are treated like human beings in their place of employment. And that was our last super chat, my friends. I want to thank all of you who sent those in. Very good conversations today. Great questions. I appreciate some of the challenge, some of the little bit of a pushback from some of you. So thanks for sending those in. I want to remind you that all of this stuff is going to be available over on locals.com. So I want to thank some of our new members over there. A couple people joined up over the weekend. We have 2N Glenn who joined up. I love that name, 2N Glenn, and he's got 2 N's in Glenn. We also have Hack Consulting joined up. We got Rarer Atex. I don't know if there's a word in there. RHERRER Atex. Rarer Tex. We got Larry Light joined up. Good to see you, Larry. We got Mr. Swift is in the house. And then we have Feisty Lady joined up as well. So I want to thank you 6. Thanks for joining up. And sorry, Rarer Atex. I kind of botched that name, but Still appreciate you joining. Now, what did they join? They met us over on locals.com. Locals.com is it's a separate little community, a lot of other great communities over there, some other attorneys, some other sort of free speech advocates, free thinkers, and so on. But we also have a lot of this stuff that you can grab. So the slides will be over there. The impeachment documents, if you want to join the impeachment party, next week, folks, is the big debut. That's where we're going to see the trial take place. So if you want to get involved and download your own impeachment template so you can impeach anybody that you want, easy to do. All you have to do is go download the template, fill in this stuff that is highlighted in yellow, like the politician name, the elected position, and then you too can impeach anybody that you want. This is also our existence system. So this is a personal development template that I have. These are 2 PowerPoint slides. You can download those for free. They're called existence systems. I made a whole video about this on January 1. Also grab a copy of my book. It's called Beginning to Winning. You see that down here. It's a free PDF. You can get that over on Locals, or you can buy it on Amazon if you want. There are also links that we share, some good conversation, and the ultimate reason to be over there is the great people, okay? Awesome people. Many of the questions that we took today actually came from the Locals platform. So it's free if you want to just view, if you want to just consume the things or download the book or download the documents. It's totally free over there. If you want to comment, if you want to ask a question or participate, you got to pay $5 a month. That's all it is, $5. And it makes you a supporter. You support the show, and you get access to everything and more. You get to comment, you get to participate, and converse with some other awesome people. So I encourage you to head on over there, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's a pretty cool platform, and they're developing a lot. They are, I think, live streaming will be coming soon in this year. So I'm pretty excited about that. Other than that, the last final thing is I am a criminal defense lawyer. I work right here at the R&R Law Group, and we're a criminal defense law firm. So we help people charged with crimes, things like DUIs, domestic violence, drug offenses, major felonies, even minor traffic tickets. We can help with all of that stuff. So if you or somebody that you know or love has been charged with a crime, we would be very honored and humbled if you trusted us enough to send a referral our direction. We have a mission here. It's to provide safety, clarity, and hope for people who've been charged with crimes, not only in their cases, but also in their lives. So if you know anybody, we'd be very humbled to get a referral from you. We do a very good job. We'll make sure that they leave in a better position than we found them or they found us. And that's it. I want to thank everybody once again for sticking with us through this program. I know there was a lot of videos and a lot of clips, and it was a little bit of a long one, but important stuff, some heavy stuff. So thank you once again. Quick reminder, we're going to be back here live tomorrow, same time, same place. So that's 5 p.m. Arizona time, 4 p.m., which is Mountain, 4 p.m. on the West Coast over in California and up there. We also have 6 p.m. in Texas Central Time, 7 p.m. over in Florida. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.